First item on the agenda is the public comments. Michelle? Okay, the first person that signed was Nancy Edwards. Come on up, please. Just state your name and your address, and then dive in. You have 3 minutes, so you're aware.
I'll talk fast, and I'll try to get it all set. Okay, my name is Nancy Edwards. I live at 9902 Royal Colony Drive, 28173. And I'm speaking on behalf of 2 wonderful clients that I have. They're seniors, they're in their 70s. They have land over on Newtown Road and Waxhaw Indian Trail. We have a contract on it. Engineering costs based on the contract has limited the number of lots. We have 52 acres total, and the number of lots that would be buildable at 1 acre per lot with all your restrictions are 32 lots, maybe 33. What this does, it reduces the price of their property in half. So they are getting $40,000 per acre for the beautiful land, and as a result of the restrictions that Wesley Chapel has, they are asked to accept $22,000 to $23,000 per acre. And we think we need your help. I don't know whether conservation housing, the tree save, reorganization of trees, or what, but we're asking for mercy. These people are in their 70s, they have spouses who are ill, they need nursing home care. This is their 401k, and it's been cut in half or less. So that's my story.
Thank you.
We're throwing ourselves on your mercy. Okay, thank you.
The second person that signed up, it looks like Patty Mockler. Is that right?
Yes, hi. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Patty Meckler. I'm a realtor. I live at 5800 Lakeway Trail, 28173. I've been asked here also on behalf of my client to help them. They cannot come. His wife is terminally ill, and of course the same issue is that they own land. They've been residents here since the early 1900s, and this land has been sent to their family, and it's been sent to the survivors, and it's been bequeathed to them to help them in their older age. Again, they're trying to sell their land. If any of you had land in this area, you would love to get a $40,000 price, yet the same thing happened. All the restrictions and all of the things related to the zoning have reduced the price of the land down to less than $20,400, around that range. I want to just say 1 or 2 things. I've done some research, and I found that most of the council members and the members of the planning commission, most of them live in beautiful, beautiful communities, like Wesley Chase, Silverthorne, is it? Yeah. And they're all R20 communities. And the majority of you have property that you own on less than an acre. The majority of you. And yet we're not looking into consideration of people who have had land here and have paid their dues for over 100 years or so, and have now trying to cash in to take care of their families and cannot move. I don't ask for a broad sweep of all the changes, but if you approach this in a logical and caring way to see who has been here the longest, you could still manage your town's growth without opening the doors to all these subdivisions. Yet all of your subdivisions are beautiful, even if there are 20. By the way, when I first got this land to sell, I called about 7 or 8 developers. They all hung up on me because they said you cannot deal with Weddington, you cannot deal with Wesley Chapel, so you cannot get the growth that you need. I read through your articles that you were looking to grow about 300, I did the math and looked it up, and from your population census from 2010, it said that you wanted to increase your residences and your population by about 970 some odd people. I did some math that comes out to about 3-point-something people per home. That comes out to 325 homes you're planning to grow. I also did the math, and if you're planning to grow 325 homes, you would need over 600 acres to achieve that. And that does not include any amenities to these subdivisions.
15 seconds.
And to make a long story short, I asked that we explore this further, perhaps in another meeting, because there are solutions to do this. Perhaps grandfather in the people who've been here the longest and make those exceptions, because they pay their dues and not look at the people who are looking to flip it for a profit. But I thank you very much, and we look to explore this again.
Thank you. Next person on the agenda, in the comments, is Laurie Bailey.
Laurie Bailey, 1057 Nicholas Drive. There are 3 things I'd like to mention tonight. First, I'd like to thank the council and the planning board for the recent steps to provide more transparency and information to residents. The addition of the summary of actions helps inform residents of the meeting outcomes and makes it easy for residents to keep up with the many items impacting the village. The posting of meeting packages in advance will help residents be aware of and able to prepare for the items under consideration for the next meeting. Thank you for listening and acting to provide the much needed transparency. Second, I encourage the council to continue to review each procedure and ordinance and to identify opportunities to close loopholes and ensure the village interests are protected. As technology changes or new standards and best practices are defined, it's important that those changes are appropriately accounted for by the village. It's important to make it easy for staff and residents to access information, so I ask the council to invest in the necessary system updates. There was a recent incident where staff could not easily locate all ordinance details on the topic since the details were spread across multiple ordinances. The ordinances are individual documents and there is no global search short of reading each one to identify all the relevant sections when considering requests. It should not be difficult for the staff to locate information, nor should the staff feel they must remember every detail or read every document before responding, when a computer search could readily provide the answer. Investing in village technology in this way would be a good use of tax dollars. And third, make the most of the upcoming advance. This is a great opportunity to ensure that the village has the right plans defined and the council is ready to execute to achieve the vision of Wesley Chapel while ensuring that any growth is aligned with the land use plan. The recently requested tax and map change will not be the last. The advanced planning should include preparation for the next review of the land use plan so that it will be an orderly, structured, and understood process. Let the Village of Wesley Chapel government be a leader in Union County, prepared, effective, efficient, and a model for others. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Sandra.
Oh, sorry, wrong sheet.
Wrong sheet. No worries. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Didn't sign up? Okay. We will move on. The next item on the agenda is the additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. Any changes? No? Paul?
My only thing is, since Bill is unfortunately not here tonight, the conservation topic being kind of particular, I do want to hear about it, but I asked him to put the vote off until next month. I mean, it's not like he planned on not being here.
Well, that's further down,
Yeah.
okay, but we can start the discussion anyway. I think this has sat on the sidelines for a couple of years. So,
I mean, I do have some comments on that as well.
Sure.
So.
great, appreciate that.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't say anything.
I wanted to add to it, because I don't think we put it on the agenda, which was the approval of the plumbing repairs at the park and the dollar value of $1,110.
We were gonna do that under the finance
Oh,
report.
that's right. Well,
Put it anywhere you want.
I'd like to just put it in the consent agenda. We knew it was broke in, the check valve and needs replacement, so, yes, ma'am.
You might not want to put it on consent because he did put in a caveat that if he finds the pressure reducing valve is broken, he may have to do more than that.
Okay, no, we won't put it on there. Thank you, Cheryl.
Put it under either Parks report or under the finance report.
Take your pick.
Finance.
Okay,
Any
so
others?
then we're back to the agenda as is, it says except with the addition of the plumbing repair under the finance.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, the next item is the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, the only question I have is the closed minutes.
We're already done with that, aren't we?
I have them here, yeah, if you haven't seen them.
Is that the ones we signed last? That's why I'm
I
asking.
don't send out closed minutes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
So we can't approve.
okay, if you want
We
to.
haven't seen. I don't want to anyway.
I thought we already signed those last month. Or
That
did
was
you?
a different.
Different
yes.
closed session. There were a few of them.
Okay.
I did have one question, I guess there's nobody here to answer this, but I was looking at the code enforcement report,
Right?
and one of the properties on here is over in Meadowmere, and I still get a lot of questions about it by the gentleman who's pretty obviously running a lawn care business out of his house over there. I really love it. Pardon my mess here, trying to sort through this. I was trying to sort through on that, the way that printout showed, is the way that resolution, what action has been taken over there, or what, because, hold on, I've got it right here. Not that one, I can't read that. This one. The way things are lined up here, type of violation, complaint, running business for residents. Meadowmere, date of initial investigation, 10/25/17. Comments, I don't know how this lines up over here of resolved yes or no, but again, I keep getting feedback and cars being parked on the street from people that are showing up to work, so.
This sheet is just complaints. He does not consider it a violation because he does not have it on the violations report. And he did say it was closed, so that's his status on it.
Well, I think two things. One, as far as visibility, viewing the report, see if he can put the grid lines in.
Okay.
It's not done in Excel, I'm sure, it's just, he doesn't have the grid lines. So it should be pretty simple. This way you can line it up.
Yeah, it was,
And then secondly, if that's the case, then what's the best way, if Paul has some particular questions about that? You have,
You can send it to me and I'll be glad to go to him,
okay,
or you can send it directly to him.
okay.
does that work?
That's fine. I mean, I just, I don't get a whole lot of feedback from the community people, but I live near there and people ask a lot.
Sure. Okay,
So it's, yeah.
we've got a motion, got a second. All those in favor? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, John, the planning board report.
Good evening. So tonight I'm going to give you an update on our last planning board meeting and our next planning board meeting scheduled for March 26th. So our last planning board meeting, one thing to note, we have, with the help of Cheryl, we've made our planning board packets available to the public online. So just like tonight, we got some expression of they enjoyed that, and it's nice being having the community available, know what we're talking about. So I think that was a good decision. Next thing to talk about, we'll talk about the berms, the new text amendment. I'm not sure if you guys got that already, but we voted 5-0 in favor of it. In general, it's allowing berms to be used similar to walls and fences for subdivisions. Allow for a 20% reduction in the setbacks, is what you guys sent, or what we sent you guys. Next thing, I was looking at the lighting plans in some of the previous homeowner associations, some of the subdivisions that were done. I want to give a lot of, Tim did a really good job going out and finding what was the root cause, identifying what happened, what was the root cause, So we noticed that some of them do not meet our ordinance, and I think the root cause is that it somehow got passed through and approved that way. So we're going to do more due diligence going forward to make sure that we catch those moving forward.
And I think Tim is as well. I think something was, I think we were assuming the engineer was looking at that and the engineer wasn't.
Yeah, and it's been happening, I guess, over the last few years, actually before Tim, I believe.
Right.
So we've caught that and we'll address it from now on.
Yep.
All right, so the fourth thing was looking at RUC zoning. Cheryl did a fantastic job of putting a memo together, the historical,
Context.
yeah, exact context and summary. It's pretty impressive to see that we've been working on this, dealing with this, I think since 2010. So, some of us have come and gone. I mean, there's a lot of new people here, obviously, since 2010. So it's nice to go back and kind of see why we're there. Because we were asked by council to review that. But I think the history really shows kind of where we are. And I think we all stand on, looking at that summer, I think we all agreed the best thing we do right now is just address it as problems come up. Not to do much now.
And I think she made it clear, I think, that the original intent of the RUC zoning was to protect residents that annexed in after they had been approved at the county level, so that their setbacks were per the original drawings and things like that.
Correct. And the last thing, we did not have any council members attend our meeting. We did have a spot open, hoping to have some discussions. So we again on our next meeting, which I'll translate to go to now, we do have a spot open for council board members. So I believe that, fantastic, she'll be showing up, and hope to see how that conversation goes, and hopefully invite everyone else to come and share with us their ideas, planning board, and same thing, share our ideas. Just open up lines of communication. So thank you, Amanda, for signing up for next month. Other than that, actually, we have no new business on our planning board agenda for next week. We have some other business to kind of follow up, but nothing really substantial. That's all.
Questions for John?
I don't know if this is the right place for it, but council is in the middle of updating our procedures and reviewing them, and Cheryl found some, what was it, the school of government recommendations for changes to our procedures. Is it a good idea to ask planning board to also review theirs and do some editing to theirs and see if there's any?
Actually, planning board can't change their procedures. We checked with George, and council can change planning board's rules of procedure.
But if they want to look at it and make recommendations like anything else, I think that would be fine, right?
And they started doing that last week.
They did?
Sure.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
So we know over time things change. That's a good point. Thank you, man.
Well, I'd also ask Cheryl to send John a copy of our new procedures, just so John knows what they are as well.
Absolutely. Except we haven't approved them yet.
Well, after they're.
But you can see them in draft, absolutely. I'm just
Either.
All right.
just aware that they may change.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Are you staying around for the
Yes.
conservation subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the youth council committee report. Come on down.
Alright, so we only have a few updates. Right now we're trying to figure out a new event or something to do with the town. We'd like to work with you guys more on the next thing that we do. Maybe like work with a festival, run like a stand or something smaller that we could definitely handle. I see that we have later on the agenda the motion for the proceeds. So I encourage to go in favor of that. One of the things that we really want is we could really use a liaison at our meetings. We're kind of don't have a lot of guidance, so I just think that would help add structure to our meetings.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't really have anything.
We'll talk about that, because I'm running out of bandwidth.
Right. Well, we can get a team and figure it out. Okay. We'll make sure you get it.
Is the youth committee willing to work with Parks and Rec committee on events?
Definitely.
We'd like to see that. We'd like to see more cooperation. Good.
I think it's a win-win.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, I don't know if we have one, the Parks and Rec Committee, anybody here? Oh, sorry.
I'll stand in for him. Okay, we had, on the 27th, we had a special meeting, basically with the, it was kind of a focused agenda. The objectives were to really look at the charter. I think that was our takeaway from the last council meeting, and make recommendations on revisions. We looked over and decided kind of how we wanted to structure the committee. We appointed John as our chair, well, we didn't appoint him, we came up with a recommendation that we would like to have John be our chairperson. And then we set up the next year's worth of meetings, and we forwarded all of that information to Cheryl. During the public comments, we met a person that's interested in becoming a member of the committee. That's Wayne Todd. So he sent in his application. And then Landon Klaus presented an Eagle Scout project to the committee during the public comments, and he passed out a sketch with photos to kind of show us where he wanted to install a flagpole. I think we've already got a flagpole from Lockfopper, and so we kind of just reviewed what he wanted to do and kind of gave him a couple of suggestions that we thought aesthetically would look, in our opinion, would look a little bit better, and he was open to that. So, and then another thing too, and actually just to echo the youth committee, we would like to have a liaison at our meeting as well. We found in the past that, and we made that recommendation in our charter, we found in the past that it was very beneficial to us because we had up-to-date information being exchanged in our meetings, and knew that we could, keep communications going back and forth. So it really was a very beneficial arrangement. So, but other than that, and we threw together an agenda, a tentative agenda for our next meeting, which is going to be, our meeting schedule is going to be the third Tuesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. here at Town Hall. And then kind of wanted to start tackling things like getting the bids for the amphitheater, lights and sound, some of the priorities that we had talked about where we left off. So that's going to be our agenda for the next meeting. Any questions?
Yeah, I would add that the council's already approved Landon Klaus's Eagle Scout project, and Wayne Todd is now officially a member of the Parks and Rec Committee, according to the consent agenda that we approved just a few minutes ago.
Terrific. He brings in a lot of experience. He was a park ranger, and we're really excited to have him.
Was there also something about who's going to keep the minutes? Didn't you need someone to keep the minutes for the meeting?
Well, is there any going to be?
In the past, we always had Linnell. We had Linnell. Before Linnell, there was.
Well, he's Cheryl too.
So I think we need, as a council, to discuss how to do that, because it's a little bit more in depth, especially when we're spending money on Parks and Rec compared to the youth committee or something like that.
Well, you're making recommendations.
I
don't know if she's got.
Youth committee has a secretary, so do we not designate a secretary within the Park and Rec committee? And
I think what we'll have to do is just take that offline with Cheryl and see what the bandwidth is, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing, and I had this in my notes, is in the past, John Lepke, when he left as Parks and Rec director in the past, gave up his keys to the park. He'd like to get a set of keys back for the shipping container, and to the basic, the things that we had keys to before, when he was Parks and Rec director. Storage, electrical.
I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Anyone here?
Okay. Do we need a motion for that? Or,
There's some things where I only have one key.
well, we can make extra keys.
That's probably what we should do anyway.
Yeah, we should never have just one
I'm a
key.
disaster planning guy, you never had one of anything.
Yeah.
Some of them I'm not sure you can make keys.
Well, we'll see if we can. If we can't, then
Switch
one
locks.
key stays here.
Yeah.
I mean,
So do we need a vote? We don't need a motion for that. Just make a set of keys, give them to the Parks and Rec chairman.
I don't think so. I mean, what Cheryl usually does with keys is sign them out and,
Usually we get council approval.
okay, well, I know in the past you also signed them out, but I'm fine
Well,
with that.
I'm just saying, I don't sign them out unless I have your approval.
Ah,
Yeah.
Well, then I would make a motion, we make a set of keys for the gates, the storage container, the electrical. We make a set of keys to give the Parks and Rec director, committee chairman. Unless somebody has an objection.
you made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now do we have discussion?
I mean, I don't see a problem with it. As long as there's not work projects or things going on out there, because that's why we've got Lucas for
Correct.
all that, so.
I'm not talking about that yet.
Okay. Just making sure.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
I wanted to comment for the Park and Rec stuff on this band shell that's come back up again. Bill's done a lot of research and obviously has some quotes on it. My recommendations and my ask would be is you guys sit down and communicate as to what's apples and apples.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we don't wanna spend good money after bad.
Well, it's third Tuesday, you said? You mean-
Yes, third Tuesday, so it'll be the,
What I'm gonna ask is if Bill either can make that or provide the documentation to the committee.
You know, it's
And
fine.
That'd be great.
compare it to anything else they get as well, and this way we'll know where the differences are. If there are any, for that matter.
terrific.
And Pat, later in this, I think one of the next things we're going to be repairing that water main, approving the money to repair the water main as well.
All right. So anyways, we sent a draft of the charter over to Cheryl. Not sure if we made it in time to get into your packet.
I didn't send anything.
Okay, but,
But we will.
and then, the meeting schedule and then our minutes, so you have all of that information. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Pat.
you.
Thanks for standing in, Pat.
Yep.
Something Pat was saying, I thought Park and Rec was able to appoint, procedures, should they can appoint their own chairperson, or do we need to do that? Do you
I guess
remember?
it just depends what it says in their charter. I don't know.
Does it exist?
We appoint the members, I believe they select their own
That's what I thought.
chairman.
That's what I thought, okay. I thought Pat was asking, so I want to make sure we didn't forget that either.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Next item, report from
Oh,
the.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Liaison, Board Parks and Rec Committee?
Again, I have no objection myself. Anybody? Thoughts?
I've had that position in the past, I wouldn't mind taking it over again,
Okay.
but you have to appoint that, or the council has to appoint that.
I think we've done that as a council, if I remember correctly, for the other ones, so. Typically all liaisons, whereas you certainly can provide input, the committee runs the meeting, so, and the chairperson, that's why they're a recommending body, but we all know that, I think. So, do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I know. Well, but I can appreciate that. I mean, I found when I used to attend all the planning board meetings, that I thought it was an advantage to both of us, so. As before. before John. Thank you. Next item is the report from the finance officer and receive the annual audit report. Cheryl?
Our auditor was gonna try to make it here tonight, but I think she was out of town and may have gotten caught by weather also. During the month, I transferred $1,000 to town hall utilities from contingency. During the month, we appropriated the $275,000 for the road. We received in our property tax money and other recurring items. Sales tax is looking good. We sent the $275,000 check to NCDOT for that roundabout. We had our other normal recurring expenditures. We paid for the remainder of the youth council event expenditures, the t-shirts and the Queen City timing. They sent us a refund because we had originally sent them $500, so they sent $400 back. We had some office supplies, paid for our code enforcement, training and zoning expenditures, and salaries, and insurance, and retirement. We paid for the audit, and we paid for the attorney, Foster Lake and Pond, Lucas Lawn Landscape, garbage, porta pots, Duke Electric. Now you have the quote to fix the water over at the park. And this is the company that originally put it in at the park. And he proposed $1,110, but that is to remove the existing backflow preventer and put in a new one. But he said it doesn't include replacing the pressure reducing valve. He won't be able to tell until he can get the backflow preventer and get full pressure to determine whether there's any problem with that. So it's possible that this could go up from $1,110. We do have about $1,800 in the account, so maybe you can just approve the $1,110 and up to $1,800 if necessary.
I think that would be wise, because it probably is, the backflow preventer's probably toast.
Well, he's doing a backflow preventer, but if that pressure reduction
I'm sorry,
valve-
pressure, I meant to say pressure reduction valve,
Yeah.
because I saw the water spitting out of that, and it was substantial. I think our water bill was over $100, and we didn't use any water apart this month. It's all leak. I'm hoping that the Union County Water Company will give us a one-time credit per calendar year. If you have a leak and prove that you've had the repairs done, they'll give us some kind of a credit. I'm not exactly sure what that dollar amount is, but they will give us a credit per leak. So, if you need a motion, I'll motion that we approve up to $1,800 on the repairs at the park for the water main break, to include the backflow preventer and the pressure reduction valve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion, any discussion?
No, I mean, he gave us an estimate of what he thought if it was the pressure relief valve.
He didn't give a price
I
for
mean, it's
that.
gotta be fixed when we're done, so.
I sent you all the form.
The original, like, and that would have been my question, so, but if we would have had that, it would have helped, I guess, a little bit, but we've set up to $1,800 in case it goes a little lower.
That's fine.
Or okay.
Motion to approve.
Well, we had that. All in favor?
I'm glad,
Keeping track, huh?
Cheryl, we're also talking about water bills. I know we had an agreement with the developer next door while they're putting up the new building to let them use the water here at the town hall. That was for the month of February. But now that they're doing the brickwork, they're using a lot more water. Have they agreed to pick up our water bill for the month of March as well?
Oh, yeah, it's until they're done. And
Okay.
he did pay us within like 2 days.
Awesome. So free water for us. Drinking fountains available for everybody. No charge.
Just so everybody's aware, the $275,000 that Cheryl referred to was a partial payment for our side of the payment, that's the way I'll say it. Towns to have the roundabout at Potter and Wesley Chapel Road, whatever you want to call it, put in. So, and since I've been involved, as Paul has as well, with the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, which we're a member of, this is very typically how you can expedite a project in your town, is by paying part of it. I don't know that we want to get in that line of business all the time, if you will, but in this instance, that is a area that's sorely in need of some kind of improvements. So
I just hope we don't use, I hope the DOT does not use the same crew that did the one on Waxahachie Trail Road. If we have any input on that, I would like to request.
I don't think
we
get
don't.
involved in vendor selection.
We don't, but that doesn't even come before the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, otherwise known as CRITPO. If you ever hear that acronym, that's what it means.
Cheryl, one last thing under finance. Is this audit available to public?
I don't have a PDF of it that I can ask the auditor. I mean, I have copies if someone wants to come look at it. I can't hand them out.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest see if we can get a PDF.
Okay, okay.
I think that's
I mean, this is a lot of information, but is this privileged information?
No.
Okay. So if I showed it to my next door neighbor, it would,
Yeah, it's fine.
I wouldn't violate the procedures.
Please do.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And overall, the audit again said we are in, what's the word I'm looking for? We are following all of the North Carolina statutes around planning, as well as our own rules around the amount of reserves we have, et cetera. So, again, Cheryl's doing a good job, I think, keeping us on track. So, any other questions?
Yeah, was there talk at any point, are you happy with the amount that we're keeping in contingency, like for the beginning of the year?
We keep 25% budget. I think you should keep more.
The actual recommendation from the state is actually less. And we chose a higher amount years ago, but we can choose a higher amount again. And again, typically what happens during the year, revenue is slower. Most of our revenue is taxes, which have to be collected. Sales taxes from the different cable, electric, and I'm trying to think of the other one, if it doesn't matter. Water, I think, not water. But anyway, and they typically come in later in parts later in the year. So we're expending money at the beginning of our fiscal year in July, and August and September and October, and we don't have revenues coming in. That means we still have reserves, and that's the point of having those reserves. But
The thing is that we are a cash-rich town right now. I don't know, in the future that could change. But like even now, except for using the fund balance, we're 14,000 in the red year to date, and it's February. It used to be we were out of the hole by November. So I think it would be a good idea to have more than 25%.
Do you have a number?
40%?
that's something we'll do during the budget season. Yeah, because you can't change it now.
But just something to maybe think about.
It's on certainly on my list. I think it's something we need to look at.
Another thing you might want to look at, Brad, you used to look at the book every month when you would go to planning board meetings to have some oversight.
We can figure something out again. I don't know that I'll go to every planning board meeting, because I think it's a good idea for different members to go. But I also think, maybe I'll come in once a month to do that or something like that. That's fine.
I'll be up there.
Yeah. Cheryl keeps a very, like a binder full of the expenses and whatever we do. Largely, the expenses have gone up because of maintenance both at the park and here at the town hall. These projects were only started recently, so recently, 3-4 years ago. That's recent to me. Thanks, Cheryl. Any other comments? Did we ever, I think we approved the audit at the last, we don't have to approve the audit separately. We already did, didn't we?
Should they approve it?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve the audit for ended June 30th, 2017, for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Paul, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is conservation subdivision text amendments. So, Tim, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. Conservation subdivision is an item, as you are all aware, that's been discussed for a long time, since roughly 2015, which during most of that year, Bill Dust, my predecessor, worked with the planning board to develop a draft document, which much of it is still a topic of discussion. Most recently, in the fall of last year, the council, particularly Councilman Rodriguez, asked the planning board about the status of this, and so this is it's gone through the planning board since then, and so now this is coming back up for a discussion. And again, to reiterate, tonight they're not requesting a public hearing or a vote. Tonight is a discussion this evening, and I would say at the beginning, there's no real timetable associated with this, so whatever is the pleasure of the council in terms of how you would like to discuss and handle this. The items that you have that I put together are the text of the most recent draft of the text amendment, my staff report with a history of the process, if you will. I've also put together some additional research that I did on my own since Bill has been here, just mostly to help me get my arms around the topic, as well as to see if there's something I can do to complement what has been done before. And then provide some of Bill's good work on providing like a summary of the text amendments in matrix form that's easily digestible. So, conservation subdivision is a topic or a concept that basically it basically involves identification of land on a site that you want to preserve. It involves developing a yield number of lots and providing flexibility in how you develop that site in terms of lot size and lot layout. There's a lot of different purposes associated with this. I know we've talked about maintaining open green space, but it also has the opportunity to provide more site-sensitive development, lower costs in terms of infrastructure, oftentimes creating more of a sense of neighborhood in terms of how buildings are oriented on a lot as well. Some of the particular features that are on the table for Wesley Chapel right now is that the yield number is basically based upon the R40 zoning. The R40 concept, the conservation zoning concept would apply to R40 zoning. That's what I meant to say. Kind of stumbled over that, not very well. And then that is also that serves as the base of the number of lots that you would be able to have per a site. I'm not going to regurgitate all the information you have, but there's discussion about the minimum acreage size, the amount of conservation area that's required, the dimensions of the lot in terms of the size, the lot width, the purpose of the open space. There are some differences between what the planning board and the council have looked at, and here's probably a good point to talk about those. The planning board felt that a minimum acreage size of 15 acres is appropriate. The council in this most recent version had 10 acres. The minimum lot size for the council had recommended that 30% of the lots could be 20,000 square feet, with the balance could be 30,000. Planning board had recommended 30% of lots being 30,000 and the balance being 40,000 square feet. So larger lot size associated with what the planning board had requested. And going through the history of this, there may be a difference between the lot width of 120 versus 100. And and trying to go back and piecemeal what is actually on the table is a little bit difficult because of the number of meetings, the number of versions that have been put together. But just to let you know that from my reading, that the lot width had been an item of discussion. And kind of backing up the big picture between the planning board version and what the council is saying, I would, as a professional, say that it appears that the planning board version is more closely aligned with more of a conventional R40 zoning category. And I say that because of the larger minimum lot size that they're talking about, the lot dimensions, as well as kind of the minimum acreage that are being proposed. Let's see. In the supplemental memo that I put together, I tried to identify some other tools that, or variations of conservation subdivisions that other jurisdictions have done that might be applicable here in Wesley Chapel that could address some of the differences and kind of bridge the gaps here. And there's things like limiting the lot coverage to a certain percentage of the site. For instance, only 50% of the site can be lotted. The balance is remaining unlotted, unplatted open space. Or limiting the, providing a density bonus if that minimum amount of area is disturbed. Or providing greater flexibility in lot size. And I think you'll read in the material that I think Weddington, I believe, goes down to like a 12,000 square foot minimum lot size in their conservation zoning. So the big picture, though, is again, it's conservation zoning versus conventional zoning. It's a matter of open space and lot size. You're having a trade-off here. There's flexibility on the one sense for associated with conservation zoning versus kind of a prescribed design with conventional zoning of a minimum lot size. And then also just the idea that, where is your open space? I think most people would say that 40,000 square foot lot is open space. That's intentionally open space. It's though within a private lot setting as opposed to more commonly held open space, which you have in a conservation zone where you have like an HOA managing it. And you'll notice in the text amendment that Bill had drafted that there are provisions for maintaining that and establishing a conservation easement to make sure that that common open space is managed appropriately. My recommendation was that the conservation zoning is a good concept. I think it's supported. Your land use plan makes mention of the conservation zoning as a tool in one of the policies under the goals for maintaining the residential character of the community. I point out a couple specific things that I noticed in my reading of this. First of all, I noticed that there's a 75-foot rear yard requirement, and to me, one of the purposes of the conservation zoning is to provide flexibility in your yard requirements, and the 75 feet rear is greater than even your conventional zoning requirement for a rear yard. That seemed to me somewhat contrary. I understand that there's a purpose in there, and you can read that in that. And I wasn't there for the discussion of when that was discussed in real time, but that seemed, upon my reflection, to kind of be contrary to the concept of a conservation zoning. Second of all, there's a permitting in agricultural uses. One of those is permitted as part of an open space idea. And as part of agriculture, it does allow agricultural buildings. And beyond the idea of a barn, which is associated with agriculture, there's a lot of agriculture that goes on in greenhouses or long structures that really can look more like an industrial warehouse. And so I would caution against allowing a structure without maybe some type of size limitation or some type of architectural treatment. More particularly size, I think, because if you think about this, we're talking about a subdivision basically where you have a substantial open space concept. That's the whole purpose of this, and to allow some type of intensive or less intensive agricultural activity, you're probably not going to really have that, because this is all the property that's owned in joint by a homeowners association usually. The final thing was, again, the open space, active recreation is allowed as a component of this open space area, but it talks about allowing parking spaces up to 10 vehicles. And again, if you're talking about a subdivision, that's a pretty good chunk of land. You're talking probably about half an acre of land at least that could be devoted to parking, and then you have access and then graveling it. And again, kind of contrary to the whole idea of having some kind of open space. So those are just my observations. I'd be glad to address any questions. I'm real glad the planning board chairman is here, so he can probably fill in some of the things that I've either said incorrectly as far as reporting what the positions are, and give you some, firsthand experience.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Absolutely.
This is kind of a complicated subject, conservation subdivisions, and I don't think anybody up here has considered themselves an expert on conservation subdivisions. Are we required to have any kind of a public input session before we adopt something like this?
Yes, this would be an ordinance change, so yes, a public hearing would be required, and that's the way the agenda item is structured tonight, discussion, and if you ready to set a public hearing date to go ahead and do that.
Okay. This could also come up at our retreat on Friday, is that correct?
Saturday morning.
Or Saturday, yeah.
Either work, correct?
Plus, I know that Paul had said that Bill wanted to put off having any kind of a vote on this specifically until we had full council here, which I think is fine. Yeah, I would really like to see us get input, maybe a joint meeting where there's a planning board, the council, and the public is invited. But you're saying that's already a requirement of making this ordinance change?
Well, not necessarily a joint meeting. You could have that. If you're talking about a joint meeting with the planning board, that may be a good idea.
Yeah.
But having a public hearing, because there's an ordinance change, yes, that's a statutory requirement.
But you're not required in a public meeting to have the planning board or the council there, is that correct?
No.
Okay. I think it's something we should talk about and look at the nuances of what we could potentially be cause and effect in making these changes so that everybody understands so they can vote intelligently.
Planning board did a lot of work on this. It was before my time, but they did a lot of site visits and spent a good 6 months, I don't know, longer than that maybe even.
This is before me.
It started, as Tim said, back in 2015.
It was about the same time as we were doing senior housing.
That's correct.
So,
My thoughts are, can we do, it's easy to talk, we can talk about these numbers of 75-foot setbacks. Can we do a visual, sort of even black and white drawing, some sort of optical presentation of kind of what we're talking about? I mean, Lord knows I've been running my mouth enough and say, hey, I'll be in favor, but I am very much in favor of conservation zoning. Let's try and do things really cool, really great, and set the bar for Union County. Because what we're seeing, as we've heard here, I've thought about this a lot. This transition to prosperity. We've got a lot of traditional, long-time stakeholder property owners in the community, and I would like to engage the contractor building community to see what their feedback is of why they can, or they're the ones that are ultimately going to build on these things. But how can we build really great, great neighborhoods, great communities with the unique land characteristics that we have? Because believe me, it's going to come up as a topic. The pressure points with, again, longtime stakeholders trying to sell property, moving that along, it's going to be a key topic for us in the very near future, I'm sure. That's my comment.
Anything else? I also like conservation zoning. I think it makes sense for the community. I think it does preserve green space. It was actually a recommendation back in the master plan, which was never adopted by the town, but UNCC did some work on addressing that as well. So what I would like to see, Tim, if we could, and you started it somewhat in one of these, in your staff report on this, is where you had the issue and some of the differences, but there were also a few others you mentioned. I think those are the things we need at a table so that we can kind of go through them, whether it's with the planning board. I don't know if you do it by the end of the week, maybe, but, you know, because you've got half of it here. You only got one day, Wednesday, but that would be the things that need to get resolved in order then to call for a public hearing. In my mind, you want to give the public what you think you're going to go forward with, then hear comments, and then adjust. I mean, that's pretty much typically the way you know, we do things, and I think it makes sense. You know, we can engage other people at that point as well. I mean, we can invite them to a particular meeting and say, here's a copy of it, what it looks like, what do you think? Even ahead of time, because we should have it in draft form. So, but I would really like to see us tackle this instead of kicking it down the road again. You know, I hear and I do have to say, I do hear the comments about long-term, you know, residents, stakeholders and all that, and that's important. But it also important is the way that our predecessors on the council, which were the community members that have lived here their whole lives, set up the rules. So conservation subdivision to me doesn't get away from that. It augments it in a way that's fairer to everybody is the way I'll say it, I guess. So I do think we should try and get this together. So if you can, you know, kind of make a table of all those differences, that you would be, matter of fact, what I'd like to see is the issue, what the planning board says, what the council says, what you started here, and then your recommendation as well, which is somewhat in the text here, but I think in the table, it just makes it easier for us to go down and go, which one do we want to go in the final version? And make sure it works together.
Do you even have a line for like Marvin and Weddington and our counterparts? Compare what they do with what we do? Because I know you've got
And I think you've got the information here. So.
Yeah, actually, I didn't include all the information that Bill had put together because he did what you were suggesting. He had Marvin and Weddington and their features and a lot of, you know, matrices that he put together. And I think in one of the tables, I'm not sure if it's the one I included in my material to you, was had the planning board and the council's most recent versions and pointed out the differences and different things.
Yeah, I don't know how long ago that was, but let's
Yeah,
update
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
that, maybe we can just use that. That'd be great.
You might be able to.
Good.
So are you asking for me to just provide you with copies and bring this up for the next meeting, like next month's agenda?
Yep, and then we can call for the public
That'll be the
hearing.
nature, you're asking, okay, and you'll, for your next meeting, you want me to schedule, just have another discussion, and then for you to set the public hearing, not to necessarily have the public hearing.
Correct.
Gotcha.
You need, to me, you have to have something to show the public,
Yes.
have the hearing on. If you just leave it very, very broad, you know, you get things that just,
I agree.
we couldn't do.
Well, I think the public really appreciates having something specific.
Are we going to discuss this on Saturday?
Well, and that's gonna be the next point, thank you. So, I don't know if that take a look at that table, see if it's up to date or reasonably up to date, and whether or not the table you were talking about that, you know, we haven't said, and maybe that would be a basis for us to have a discussion on Saturday, without too much additional work.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Two other things, to echo Mike's comments, you know, we get elected. There's no certification of expertness of any particular category. And I apologize, I don't know the gentleman's name who's an alternate on the planning board who's now head of planning for City of Charlotte. I don't know if, the way I'm sure his bandwidth is very tight, but I mean, he's certified at what he does. If he can offer any feedback and as well for Tim, within focus in terms of the brain trust there of looking at what the language has been for conservation zoning. Again, why not just do this thing really great and get it right and get it done? I mean, how long have we been messing with this?
Too long.
Okay, so
That's a
6
great
months.
But I just don't want to keep
That's what I'm saying, let's say within 6 months, let's get it done.
I'm gonna say within 3 months.
Okay.
I know Ty's really busy, but if we could get him,
He can't come to the event.
if we could get him sometime to sit down with Tim and or John even, and give his expert opinions.
That could work too.
And that's no indifference to you, Tim, I'm just saying if we have a little more.
People bring different experiences to bear, absolutely. Okay,
3 months.
anything else? I'd like to see it now.
I was giving 6.
Okay, next item on the agenda, sounds like we're ready to move on, is, I just called this discussion to restore trust between Wesley Chapel, Friends of Park and Recreation and the village. I think there are Sandra Bradford and Diana Bowler are here. They are the, I guess you call yourself the chair and the vice chair or co-chairs, which is. I'm trying to-
Co-chairs,
I should know that, sorry.
Wonderful.
And they represent Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks. They were kind enough, Parks and Recreation, kind enough to come here. That is not a town group, just for those, I think everybody that's here probably knows that. But for those that don't, if there is anybody, they are a separate agency or entity that has put on events here 4 years? 4 years.
A little bit higher, longer than that.
5 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I should know that, but
Since 2011.
Started with fundraising for the park.
that's true. So, unfortunately, I know Bill was one of the people that asked, but asked to have that discussion. But I guess as I said, let's have a, as far as the council and also our Wesley Chapel Friends of Park Recreation friends, let's make this an open and honest but respectful conversation, and let's move forward. That's what I'm about.
Would you like me to explain how
Be my guest.
Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks works
That was
first of
gonna be
all?
my offer. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
In case you don't know how we're structured, Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Recreation is a subgroup of the organization Partners for Parks, which is a 501c3 that is based out of Charlotte, Mecklenburg. And its role is to promote parks and recreation in the Metrolina region. And to do this, one way they achieve this is by having what you might call a local chapter of Partners for Parks with its own name and branding. They have groups that are as far north as Hickory, North Carolina. Waxhaw has a Friends of Parks group. And then we formed Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Recreation, I think in the 2012 time period. We're an all-volunteer organization. None of us make any money, but we do a lot of work that we want to put toward building the community, and especially promoting Dogwood Park and Wesley Chapel, and then as things progress in Wesley Chapel, other recreation opportunities that might come along. Diana and I have been partners in crime since 2011 when we were on the Fall Heritage Festival Committee. She was the chair and I was the council liaison for 2 years for that committee. And then since then, we have, through Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Recreation, put on 12 events together. So we worked together for 14 events total. And it is, we've held these events at different venues at the park once it was available. And then prior to that in the Target parking lot. And our goal was to try to have events that would make Wesley Chapel a desirable community, to draw attention to our town, and to attract people to the park, because many people still don't know that it is there. And it's such a beautiful asset to our town. And so that is the purpose for our organization.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Mike?
I'd like,
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Diana?
That's it.
Initially, I kept hearing, being out in the Salesforce, you hear things on the street. And I kept hearing that nobody knew that there were businesses in Wesley Chapel. And so to get the businesses involved with the people and the people involved with the businesses, we started putting these things together. So people were aware of what is here, what Wesley Chapel has to offer, and that it is a great environment to be in.
I just wanted to add that, our mission statement for Wesley Chapel is to make a great place to live and raise a family. And I think everything that these two ladies have done have helped us with that mission statement. And there are people equivalent to her in Waxhaw, for example, but those are paid positions. And these are two people that are doing it as volunteers. And I just want to commend them for doing that. And I think they deserve our respect and our support.
Thank you. Just from this point of clarity, 2 years of my last term, I spent a lot of time working with both of these, I won't say a lot, some time working with both of these ladies, and just enjoy it immensely. I think we as a town are about the people. We're about community, and I've said that I don't know how many times in the last 6 months, and I still believe that. We're about community, we're about bringing people together to both know each other and enjoy each other's company. I do think, there needs to be openness and honesty, but yet also respect. And, we'll, like anything else, like any other people, you may differ opinions on some points, but in the end, if you're working towards the same goal, you'll find a solution. And that's my opinion. So, Paul, did you have anything you wanted to?
No, I think I've said these comments before. It's been a while. I should have thought more about this. But, some of the things that come to mind, I'm not certainly trying to drag up things from the past, but questions come arise, like we wrote the check. Cheryl will have to remind me how much that was, and I'm not sure why we did it that way, but it seemed like it was easier for us that we wrote the check for some of the services to Flopper, and it was returned to us, not accepted. And so that's part of the, I guess, more the back end mechanical mechanisms that we need to get understood.
I'm not trying to interrupt, Paul.
No.
So, you want me to explain kind of how that works, or do you want to?
Yeah, that would be good. The other part of it is, and I know we're up for, you sign up for this stuff and you get luck, dirt balls as well as some snowballs every now and then. But that's where I kind of had the troubling part of it is we want to be. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm all for my mission up here is positivity and fun stuff. The park, and it still drives me crazy. I'll talk to people and they don't even know where the park is. And, one thing we need to work on, that's a different subject, is branding and awareness of where that is. But I think I said it before, was we want to be good friends and we want to support it, but yet we're still getting a backlash and just a public comment of, hey, we're not supportive of it. And I think we're just looking for more open disclosure of some of those things in the partnership, if that makes sense.
Sure. I guess first let me address the question about the check that the town wrote to Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Rec, well, more specifically to Partners for Parks. In our past events, where we have partnered with the village, rather than accepting funds and then taking the money from the village and going out and buying porta-johns and advertising and that sort of thing, the way we've structured it is that the village says, okay, we will take care of these expenses. And then we raise sponsorships and take care of this set of expenses. This is how we interact with other partners we have, like Southbrook Church. When we put the Easter egg hunt together with them, they provide the bounce house, they provide the popcorn and the face painters, and they don't give us money for us to go purchase that. They take care of their items that we've agreed upon. And then we provide things like Mr. Hughes wildlife lectures, the off-duty officers to help people crossing the 84, and the porta-johns and that sort of thing. So basically, we each have our little niches that we carve out rather than sharing and commingling our funds.
We are actually directed by Partners for Parks to handle things that way. The governments that Partners for Parks interacts with, including the Charlotte-Mecklenburg government, the town of Hickory, Waxhaw, and everybody are not supposed to be making contributions directly to Partners for Parks, but rather they handle things separately. So we are complying with their parent organization when we do things that way. The other positive to that is that the village is in complete control over how you spend the money. So if you want to get porta-johns, we're not telling you, we're taking your money and telling you where you have to get the porta-johns. You can decide what's best for the town, which vendors you want to use, and you have complete control over the quality of the product that you get and the amount of money you spend on that particular amenity or infrastructure for a particular event. We have done it that way since 2011, back when it was the festival committee. But our first event as Friends of Parks was 2013. So from 2013 to 2017, if the village elected to participate in an event, that's how things were handled. Then in August,
And it's been very successful.
yes, it's worked very well. Then in August, things were handled differently, and a check was sent directly to us, which I returned, explaining what I've just told you basically in an email, which I hope you received back in August. And from there, it was resent, another check was resent to Partners for Parks. Again, we're part of the same organization with the same understanding that if Wesley Chapel would like to partner with us, we welcome that and we desire that. But we would like for things to be handled, as we mentioned, where we take care of certain things and the town takes care of certain things separately, but all working together to make a successful festival that the community can benefit from.
Did you think? Yes?
Thank you, ladies, for your service and volunteering.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, to a lot of degree, I still want to get back in and figure out where things sort of went astray.
But what do you consider going astray as far as we know, people have enjoyed the festivals and
Well, I know
they've
they've
gone
enjoyed the festivals,
successfully?
but where it's kind of broken down on this side over here. And, so.
I mean, it was only just last year.
I know.
We've been very successful with all.
Well, I'm not
of these
denying you
events.
guys are not doing a great job, and just, some of the other comments that, I just wanted to kind of go through, it'll all be good.
As I say, that's why I want to move forward. I mean, again, yes, I've been a big supporter of theirs and worked with them. And I just know the kind of work. I also am familiar with exactly the process, not just from Wick-Fokker, but from other organizations. And the reason is so that, and I think Sandra said it, but I'll just repeat it, is that we as a village know what we're paying for. So rather than if something they do is objectionable and somebody says, well, you gave them money, well, you have no recourse. Now, not that they would ever do that. That's not, it's probably a bad example, but it can happen in other venues. Yeah, it has happened in other venues.
You have full accountability here, full accountability
And
of what you're spending your money for.
Right, exactly it. So I'd like to see us move forward and to the extent we want to be partners, great. We have been partners in terms of allowing the use of the park and, because it's a community event, I think it's all terrific and I just want to continue that. And today we approved, I don't know if you folks knew, but we approved on the consent agenda, the signs going on the park corner as well.
Thank
For
you.
the
I
events.
mean, we look forward to working with council for future events and having your support along with the people we go out for sponsors to be supporting of the events and of this town. I mean, it's all for the benefit of the town and promoting the town. And as Sandra said, none of us get any financial gain from any of these at all.
So from the sponsorships you sell, and done that in a different environment. So we're breaking it down, and is the net bottom line and net zero on that every sponsorship dollar and everything goes against the bottom line, and it's all reinvested into
Absolutely.
the.
Right. We have, the funds that we receive from sponsors either go back into the event for amenities, or if we are able to make a profit, like in Pig in the Park, where we sell tickets for the barbecue and that sort of thing, we are actually saving money toward an amenity at the park. We have $5,000 to $6,000 right now that we've saved up, not counting some money that we've also saved up to help with the flagpole project. And we would like, now that Parks and Rec has been reconstituted, we would like to work with that committee to determine exactly how those funds should be used. Our idea was to do a picnic shelter, because that seemed at the time, a couple years back, something the council was interested in having at Dogwood Park. And so if that's still what Parks and Rec and council desires, then we'd like to continue saving toward an amenity like that. If council has other plans now or something that they would prefer to use the money for, then we are certainly open to discussing that. We like to do things like provide park benches, rowboat has been donated through us in the past through a generous member of our community. And we like to feel like the festivals themselves are actually benefits to the town. But our goal is to be adding amenities to the park and just coming alongside Parks and Recreation and helping the town. And that's obviously a conversation and a work in progress as we figure out what the needs are.
Yeah, don't we have Friends of Parks, Partnership Parks, and subsequently Friends of Parks and Rec? Don't we credit you for the 8 park benches we have in the park?
Mm-hmm.
That was money you raised and then donated,
Yes.
purchased and donated.
That's correct.
So I think the partnership, again, Park and Rec Committee can work with them, and then recommendations come back through us if there's anything that needs to be expended or approved from our side. And again, it's a win-win.
There's a lot of sweat equity, and if anyone wants to help, we're open
And I
to
think-
volunteers.
It's definitely true.
And I think picnic, there was a line on it, picnic shelters and issues, but, so I think it was still a potentially desirable, but I'll let Pat go back to the Park and Rec Committee and see, that's, again, something, I think it still is, but again, that's why we've got the committee, what it is. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Anyone else?
again. Appreciate you
Thank you.
hanging out with us.
Good to see you, Simon.
Always a party.
Want to take a vote on that?
Which,
Agree to get on?
no. No, but I'll hold you to it. Stop. I can do that.
No.
Item 11 is the donation of $2,108, and I have little pennies on that. I don't know what the pennies are. Do you remember, Cheryl? Oh, it's on here.
$2,108.16.
16 cents. That was the total amount that was raised by the youth council for the event, based upon the registrants, based upon some donations they received. I'm trying to think of what else was in there. But, so, and the cost of it was $2,090 something. It was about $9 less or $8 or $9 less, but again, I think we had budgeted up to $4,000 for youth council events. And so, again, I think that's a recognition of the work they've done, considering Mother Nature threw a curve at them with the snow. I still think, having 77 or so runners was pretty good. So, I would like to have a motion to approve that donation of $2,108.16 to Levine Children's Hospital, which is the charity they had advertised, from the Wesley Chapel 5K race held by the Youth Council.
And you
And
also
then-
need to appropriate the revenue and expenditure.
And appropriate the revenue and expense for the same amount.
I'll make the motion, I've got comments with that too.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Do I have a second?
What do you think, Bela?
We still have the comments yet, right?
I need a second to have comments.
I'll second it just so we can get a comment section.
Okay. I think Paul, so we've got a second. Paul, you want to go with your comments?
My comments are, I know that this probably doesn't look to be the most profitable venture on record, but going back and looking through the notes and the way it was structured, was in fact, we voted to support it as a council. We voted to support it as a funding mechanism. The wording was proceeds. So the proceeds and the proceeds are going to Levine's Children's Hospital. So I've been back and forth and I've had discussions about this. And truly and holistically, the way it was set up is the proceeds were anything that we took in for the runners that were coming to run. And I know that that helped bring in the 75 runners, that they felt like that, at least the way we were presenting it, proceeds meaning, hey, you sign up to run an event, those proceeds were going to go to Levine's Children's Hospital. Probably not the most ideal way to set that up, but that's the way it was done. And I think at this point, if and when we do it again, we structure it a little differently. But I think at this point, the way it was laid out, we did approve the funding. Those guys did great work, and some timing mechanisms caused some of the costs to be a little bit more, but at this point, it is what it is, and you should celebrate the work they put into it.
How would you structure it differently in the future?
I would term it differently of net proceeds. I would throw some different terminology in there. Again, looking at doing some different marketing, different timing mechanisms of aiding and t-shirts, and a little bit longer run, promoting a little differently. I still think it's a very viable option in there. And the 75 that we had, every one of them, for the most part, when we were doing another one. And I think if we did it in a better time frame, a better weather time frame, and promoted it a little bit more effectively, I wouldn't see a problem getting 200 to 300 people.
Not during testing week.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of lessons learned, and sometimes in life you have to get some battle scars and learn some of the hard ways.
Amen.
And I think they learned.
Well, my definition of the word proceeds is the amount that you take in above and beyond what it costs you to hold the event. In this case, it was like $10. I also understand from talking with Cheryl, our finance officer, that there were specific donations made the day of the race that were supposed to go to the Children's Hospital. I think it was $183 roughly, and I thought, well, then that money should definitely go to the Children's Hospital if that's what it was tagged for. For me, it's tough to say that even though the taxpayers of Wesley Chapel put on this event, or they're paid to put on this event, that we should be not factoring in the expenses into the word proceeds is it's a tough pill to swallow.
I'm not saying I don't disagree with it, because I've had that discussion. That's why I'm saying net proceeds. That wasn't the term that was used, and we essentially broke even. I'd say they broke even, made $9.
Well, I was coming here tonight expecting to just round it off to the $183 rounded off to $200 and make a motion to donate that money to the charity. By my calculations, that was fair and reasonable, but I'm just one of 5 people who sit up here, so.
Yeah, definitely think that there were a lot of lessons learned, like there have been, and that hopefully, I mean, I don't disagree that it's a bad event, and maybe with some partnerships with Parks and Rec and some other organizations, we can make changes for the better. I agree with Mike, I kind of have a hard time donating taxpayer money that is not a net proceed. But I can see that that the previous council agreed to something different than my understanding. Because I'm just coming into this now. I wasn't part of those previous discussions.
And the only thing I would say was, I don't look at it as donating taxpayer money, they're donating the proceeds that were raised. That's what, and maybe my definition of proceeds is maybe a little different. I would say profit, or even or net proceeds is for the future is fine. This is almost no different than years ago when we would pay for Wick Farper to do things as well, but yet we weren't expecting a return. So in this case, it was advertised as what it was, and also approved by the council as it is. So I'm not one to go back at this, and it was budgeted appropriately as well. We've got 3 things going for it, so that's where I'm at. The good thing about there being 3 council members tonight is I don't have to break a tie. All right, you want to say something?
No, I was saying basically that's what we agreed on as a council. The council's going to approve the money to hold the 5K. And again, the wording the way it is, and believe me, I've had this argument of proceeds. So it's essentially we supported the event. We just redirected the money that the participants came from all over. These weren't from Wesley Chapel.
Right.
We had people from Landis. We had people from all over. And like I said, there's some lessons learned, and I kind of got into it sort of late, and there were some mechanisms that if we do it again, will be different, should we say. And this is what it is.
And they're looking at other events, other things to do, as Justin told us during his update. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, I'm going to call for a vote, unless there's any other comments.
I gave this a second because I thought we needed to discuss it in an open forum. I can't vote for this. Sorry. It may be something that we have to table until we have a full council, and then we do end up with a tie, and you can.
However you want to do it, that's fine with me. I'm not going to say anything else. All those in favor?
Well, in the spirit of moving forward and lessons learned, and we will word it differently next time.
We're all going to have input onto that, so that's what I mean.
I will support this in recognition of your work.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. You voted for it. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. I know I was at one of the meetings afterwards and expressed that, so. But I was there freezing, like everybody else. Okay, next item on the agenda is an update on the annual, hopefully annual again. I guess I already phrased it as annual village dinner and retreat. Or we usually call it an advance. That way is retreat. Did I write that?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Anyway, we don't like to retreat. We like to advance. That is this week. It'll be this Friday night at South Piedmont Community College. It is an open meeting. Public can attend either. We will have dinner there, but if you want to participate in the dinner, see Cheryl, unless you're on a committee or a board or the council, and at which point you, or for our employees as well. But otherwise, it's $20, and if you're not gonna eat, that's fine, you can still come. And give input. We're going to have a discussion, you know, a little bit of an opening, and then we'll have a little discussion. Our former planner, Bill Dustin, will be running, facilitating the meeting. And what we typically do is we go through a discussion, really with each of the attendees to ask what they would like to see the council work on the upcoming year. And it's a primary time to do this because we're moving into budget season, because our fiscal year ends June 30th and the new year starts July 1st. So we'll be starting our budget process. So we need to begin to get our ideas together on things we'd like to do, and we'd love the input. So then Saturday morning, the planning board and council will be meeting here in the morning, and typically we will discuss things that will be done for the year, and anything that came up the night before that would be planning board related. And perhaps talk about the priority of those items. And then the council in the afternoon will talk about the overall priorities we would like to see on the items that are the other things that we can tackle. And even who might want to be a lead for that out of the council to help, you know, make sure it's happening. One of the things I'm going to propose this year is a somewhat, I hate the term report card, I'll call it a stoplight report. That's what we call things at work, where we've got red, yellow, and green, or something, some designation that we're either making progress, or we're not, or we've chosen to table, whatever it is, so that the community has an opportunity to see what we're doing, or not doing for that matter, even from the ideas from anybody that gave them to us. That Saturday session is all day, it's an open meeting, as all our meetings are. We won't be looking for any public input at that meeting, though. The input's Friday night. Anything else you want to add, Cheryl?
No, I did have to give them a count today, but I have like 1 or 2 spots extra.
Okay.
For the dinner.
You know how many we have going so far? Is that shareable?
I told them 30 and I really have like 28.
I'd like to in the future, and I know Mike and I talked about this, is in the future waive the dinner fee for the citizens who are interested in coming. I think that's the least we could do to thank them.
Even if we budget for it? Sure.
If we budget for it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's important what we eat. I think it's more important that the input we get from the residents. And I agree with Amanda.
So let's hope that we can budget for that.
Absolutely.
Don't have a problem with that at all. I think it makes sense. I think, I've always said the more input, the better. We have what? 2, 4, 6, 8 now? 2, 4, 6, 7. And that's a planning board member. So, and a Park and Rec committee member. So, I'd love to see more input. Thank you.
And we have 8,500 people in the community.
Yep.
Well, hopefully free food makes some people show up.
Well, if I said we were gonna discuss taxes there, believe me, people would show up, but tax rates. I mean, it's always a good stimulator. What are you people thinking of doing? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and approve changes to the council rules of procedure. I know Cheryl, you did some work on this, so do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, when I got started in it, I realized that I had gotten a book just this year from the School of Government with updated suggested rules of procedure for city council. So I figured if I was going to do it, I might as well do it right. So I did spend a lot of time on it and went through it from start to finish. And I mostly went either from the book or from what we already have. But there is a lot of things in there, and I did ask George to look at it. Some of them may have legal ramifications. So I hope you've read it all.
Cheryl, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Things to point out more than anything, more than a question, I guess. Remote participation in a council meeting, so if someone were to FaceTime in to the meeting, which we have done before, that member who's not physically present, this is rule number 2, they participate in the meeting by electronic means except for in accordance with the policy adopted by the council, although a member who attends the meeting electronically pursuant to such policy may take part in the debate. The member may neither be counted toward a quorum nor vote on any matter before council. That comes straight out of that new book of rules. Okay. Also, I have highlighted rule number 8, specifically where we're talking about agendas. I had talked about changing the agenda from 2 weeks to 10 days. Cheryl's spin on that was 7 business days, which is the same as 2 weeks. So as long as both of those are clearly understood. And then lastly, Cheryl, if you turn to rule number 15 on page 8 at the bottom, it says motions shall not require a second. Could you clarify that?
That's what was in the book?
So I can make a motion and I don't need a second.
That's up to you guys to require a second. There's a lot of the boards, both public and otherwise, that do away with seconds.
Really?
That's your.
Do you?
I would like to keep them, honestly.
I'd like to keep them as well. So when I read through these, I just highlighted those few things that I thought were important that we have an open discussion about. I'd like to keep a second in change rule number 15, so that shall require a second on motions. I want everybody else to give their input as well.
Are we gonna vote on this tonight?
No, because I think we've got some additional changes we need to make, so I would have liked to have.
Well,
But-
we're doing that here, I mean, I think it's.
But we postponed it from the last meeting because Bill needed to
Didn't read it.
review it. So if we had been ready, but, okay. We've got some changes here, I think, a couple.
Do you want the second or not want the second?
Oh, let's just cancel, second, no, second. Second.
That's fine.
I know in the training we went to in Hickory, the League of Municipalities referred to helping councils review their procedure or their charter and stuff like that. Is it worth getting an extra set of eyes on it too, if they do something like that, or?
Well, if they'll do it for us quickly and without charge, I have no problem with that, but if I don't want to delay this by another 30 days or 60 days or anything like that, we need to make some of these changes. Some of these procedures still have us meeting at the church over on by Wesley Chapel Elementary. I mean, that's not a big change, but that's how long it's been since we looked at reviewed these.
And Cheryl, you did a great job, because this is so much more than what we had.
It was a lot.
I mean, it's so much more than what we had.
I had a
Thank
little,
you for your time.
yep, absolutely. I did have a little bit of a discussion with George on some of this. I know George is gonna probably have some additional comments, but on rule
Page
6, page 3, where it says special meeting shall be scheduled so that it's most convenient for citizens to attend. I think we have to change that to something along the words of that should be encouraged to. You can't take away the right of the council, unfortunately, the council member to recommend otherwise.
Yeah, but we should try to have meetings, if at all possible.
Well, absolutely, that's why encouraged or whatever, absolutely.
Because no one can make a 9:45 meeting sometimes.
On a weekday or
On a
Saturday or whatever else, I absolutely agree. But I also, wanted to see if, actually, my comment was to see if we could make it stronger, and unfortunately, my original comment to George.
Well, special meeting versus emergency meeting, I think if anything came up that was so pressing that we had to make a decision on right away, I'd consider that more of an emergency meeting. And keep special meetings more restrictive, so we get more input from the residents.
Sure. On Rule 8, A, page 4, it said, I know it says the village, well, it did say the village clerk, and now you've got it saying the mayor. I think it's a joint effort. I mean, so maybe you just want to say the village clerk and mayor will come up with a thing. That's somewhat minor, I know, but I don't want anybody coming back and saying either I did something I shouldn't have, or you did something you shouldn't have. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I changed.
Item B, this is a policy for allowing inclusion of final subdivision plan on the council agenda. It seems to me that should be in the ordinances, zoning ordinances, and not, or maybe referenced in both, you know, so, because otherwise how are they gonna know that? They're not gonna come look at the council procedure to see what they're doing if they're looking at a zoning.
Well, I think, yeah, certainly George will probably have some input on there.
Okay.
But I think it's more of a guide for the planner. But I thought it was really kind of eye-opening that it says on the next page that the bond must be submitted within 5 business days of approval of final plat, or the plat is null and void. We did not get Heritage's bond for 25 days, but I don't think, I mean, that seems crazy to me to have that here.
I think what this doesn't have, what this does have, that ordinance does, is a time sequence on a lot of these things, and tying them to your, you know, specifically, so.
Yeah, but I think what Cheryl's pointing out is from a developer's perspective, the developer's not gonna read our procedures as much as he's gonna read our ordinances.
Sure.
And it should be something covered under our ordinances, not under our procedures, because we don't want it to be, you know, we don't want to penalize them if we find it after the fact, but at the same time, we didn't tell them to look there.
And the zoning thing could say, essentially, it has to meet all this criteria before it can get on the agenda, because you're the one who would propose that to be on the agenda.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, it all runs together. Let's George,
No, I agree with
you
that.
vote. Anything else? Scribble notes.
Do we have motions during council comments?
Can't do that. Can't do that. The question was being able to have motions during council comments. I don't like the idea, however, in the course of running a meeting, you can't prohibit someone from making those.
I put it in here.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there
Be
somewhere.
something we do.
Yeah, but I think that was one of the ones you and I talked about briefly, George, so again, that's rules.
Rule 14.
14. Yes. No, 14 is,
No motions may be made during council comments.
yeah.
Well, the reason I put that on there, and I think I was the one that started that, was we're supposed to tell the public in advance what we're gonna be doing, what we're gonna be voting on, what monies we're gonna be spending. For us to surprise somebody at the end of the meeting when most people have left the meeting, to surprise them with a last-minute addition to the agenda is unfair to the residents.
The only, and here's the other side of it, if you've got an emergency thing that needs to be done, and
Then we
bring it up.
do away with the agenda deadline. We just put things down here. The last minute, I walk in, there's stuff right here, it's brand new, I've never seen it before, and we vote on it that night. That's kind of not the way we like to do things.
Oh, I agree with that, and we should not, that's where we as a council should say, no, you know, that's not an emergency, you can wait till the next meeting.
But at the same time, we'll sit here, we've had instances where we've sat here until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, we're all packing up, getting ready to go. We're on closing comments, I'm getting ready to stand up and walk out the door, and somebody throws something at me that's a curveball that I wasn't expecting.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't think we can prohibit it, it's my point, and that's what, you know.
Is that from a legal perspective?
Yeah, well, and I share with Brad that we were just talking about before the meeting. I don't pretend to be an expert on Robert's rules, but if a substantive motion is brought by a council member during the conduct of the meeting, I'm not sure you can agree ahead of time to prohibit that motion being made. I just don't know that you can adopt a procedure that prohibits it. You certainly could adopt something that, just like we were talking about earlier, that encourages council members to be respectful of people's time.
It's a loophole that we created that we should close.
Can we check with the school government?
Yeah, like I said, I just don't know. That's when Brad asked me, that was my gut reaction, that because it's during the meeting, that you can't prohibit an individual from raising a motion.
Isn't there a Robert's Rule of Order specifically saying that you can't bring up anything that's not on the agenda? We've approved an agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
You don't have to follow exactly what's on the agenda. I mean, it's not a special, in a special meeting you do.
Okay.
You can take up any public business in a regular meeting.
Well, Trey Allen wrote the book. Do you want me to, I can contact him tomorrow.
I mean, I'd be curious to know if somebody's got a perspective on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would like to.
That was just, like I said, that was my gut reaction to Brad
I'm
asking.
just trying to make it legal.
Let me put it this way, unless there's a legal reason why we can't, I'd like to see us pursue it.
Sure, let's check it out.
Okay.
That was one of the things we said leave in. Sorry.
The other note that I was trying to find where maybe notes on, it's interesting that if a council member doesn't vote, it counts neither, it's not an affirmative nor negative.
That's only for zoning.
Yeah. Everything else is an affirmative.
Yep. Only for zoning. That's a weird rule that was, the state legislature put in.
For themselves, not for us.
No comment. I'm in enough trouble.
Well, trust me, that's what it's for.
Okay, anything else, guys, on that?
So we are officially tabling, adopting the new policies and procedures.
Till next month?
Yeah, we need a couple of opinions. We can't,
Okay.
I wish we could. I wanted to, you know that.
Can we table it till Saturday?
I don't know if that gives us the time we need to.
What I think we can do, one second, John. Can we make a, we can, because we've done it in the past, we just never updated the procedures. I would like us to see us change the, at least the timing of the material for the agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would like to do a motion on that, and we can at least, that gives us an official approval for that until such time as we actually fix our procedures.
So motion.
Well, what is it gonna be?
Motion.
7 full business days, which is basically
I don't care if it's
11 days.
7 business days or 10 calendar days, that we change the 14 days to 10 calendar days or 7 working days for agenda items. That would be the motion.
At least 7 business days is very clear.
The purpose behind that, and just so everybody knows, it gives council members 2 full weekends and to look over the agenda packets, plus an entire work week to ask questions from anything that they've seen in the agenda packet, whether they have to go to the planning and zoning, or to the clerk, or to the legal department. Ask questions before a council meeting, but it also frees up getting things, kind of reducing the red tape for the planning board to get things onto the agenda and for us to get things on the planning board agenda.
And for a developer to get something heard by the planning board
Yes,
and then get
exactly.
to council instead of a 30-day
Absolutely.
delay.
It takes out a 30-day delay for a developer, which is, I think, important.
If you use the business days, it helps in case you have a holiday in there.
All right, well, then I'll go with the 7 business days on those.
So we had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right,
John, did you have something to say specific about this part?
No.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you might want to check with John and see if there's
I
any.
Thank you very much. I do remember he has it.
Okay.
What do you got, John?
In regards to the planning board's rules and procedures, as we look at that, as you guys review that, do you please take a look at how we vote in planning board differently than council does? Just so we understand what we're doing and why, because the chair can make motions or vote, or, I know there's a lot of discrepancies between how the planning board has their rules and procedures during voting and motion and what have you, versus what council is. I've never quite understood why it was that way or the reasoning, so as we look forward to look at that. Can you please review that specifically, just understand why it is different? It is.
There's a real simple explanation. The charter under which the town was founded essentially gave us what's called a weak mayor form of government, very weak. So under that form of government, the mayor does not, in that particular form. We can always update that. The planning board does not fall underneath that statute or underneath that charter. So, and a lot of planning boards do work that way, I believe. Maybe Tim could actually answer that at some point. I don't know if you.
I think that also helps with John, getting council members to attend planning board meetings. It'll help clarify those changes, those differences.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right, I think that is the case. I was going to also ask the attorney here, I understand that the planning board rules and procedures are established by the council. Is that a statutory requirement, or in some cases can the planning board create their own rules and procedures?
I mean, it's really established in the village's rules in terms of how the planning board was established,
So they could change a rule if they wanted to.
I suppose that's right. I'm trying to think if there's a statutory provision that says, I mean, this statute requires creation, but I don't think.
It was section 15 of the zoning ordinance.
Right.
I think the ordinance, so I suppose, and thought about that, but I suppose the council could change its rules to, in essence, delegate that authority to the planning board if they wanted to.
Okay.
At this point, we'd be open to suggestions if you did make any specific.
I thought we were gonna let
Procedural
them
changes.
review them and come back to us.
Yeah, right. Well, I thought we had. Okay.
You know,
And it might be that y'all need to have some conversations in the school government or look at other people's too, get some ideas.
Okay. Bio break. Okay. Can we take a 5-minute bio break, please?
His agenda's right now, is actually.
Right before road widening and part of implications for the 0.73 acres. So, and I just wanted just a little background. People may know Route 84 is going to get widened from the railroad extension to a little bit past Waxonian Trail Road, actually, to the Lindenwood subdivision entrance. But one of the things that the town agreed to do, because Southbrook Church has been good partners, is so that they didn't lose parking spaces, we shifted the road slightly south, which was more onto the park property. If you know where the picket rail fence is, it'll go to about there, I think, the widening. So that's roughly about 0.73 acres, but because, again, the town took a part of grant years ago to help build the park, applied for and won, is a better way, took us a long way. I think it was a nice effort, and we hope to do that again. But it was and what we agreed to is that land will be 22.5 acres, will be parkland in perpetuity. Well, the fact is, because of the road widening, which is sort of somewhat out of our control, we, are, I won't say violating that contingent. Well, we had a discussion, both with PARTF and NCDOT, and we've come, and there are a number of ways this can be resolved, but ideally, PARTF wants us to continue to spend the money, which the equivalent, and again, DOT will not be making right-of-way offerings until May, but the early estimate was about $50,500 for that 0.73 acres. So we need to reinvest that in land that will be used for recreation. So, and if we don't do that by roughly the time we get the money, the last resort is to give it back to Pardiff. Now, that can include Carolina Thread Trail money, starting work on that. It can include a variety of things, but it can't be maintenance, it can't be amenities, it has to be land. So that's one of the things. So my only ask out of this was, on page, was to allow myself, Mike, and the Park and Rec Committee to explore options and then come back to the council with hopefully at least one alternative, if not several.
I can add that the Parks and Rec Committee definitely does not want to give back the $50,500 to Part F. They would like to look at the option of either a Carolina Thread Trail option or the adjacent property, possibly purchasing some land. And just to be clear, it's 0.73 acres that we're losing, and we're not trying to replace 0.73 acres. We're trying to replace the equivalent amount of land that we can get for $50,500. So it's the amount of land, it's the amount of money, not the amount of land. So.
Right, and the DOT's, trying to go what they call it, consulting group that's doing the planning, did approach the property owner to the east side, which is because I think it's developed to the south, and the west is the road. So to the east side is correct, and they weren't willing at the time, but that doesn't mean that door is necessarily closed.
Right.
So there's all these options that we want to be able to explore, and I want to make sure that council is comfortable with that. Not that we're going to execute any of them, we will get full council approval. So that being said,
I'll make a motion.
questions for, no, go ahead, make the motion, then we'll discuss.
I'll make the motion to allow the mayor, council member Como, and the village parks and rec committee to explore the options listed previously by Brad, given the limited 2-month time frame.
I would also add that Part F specifically told us, I'm sorry, we're in the middle of the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now you.
I would also add that in our discussion with Part F, that they would not hold it against us if we had to return the $50,000, because they know that we've looked at every feasible option. And typically, if you take grant money and then you return it, that drastically negatively affects your score. In this particular case, they said they would not hold that against us.
Right, for future projects, so we
For
wanted to
future
make
grants.
sure we didn't impact that.
Have you?
Does it have to be, sorry,
Go ahead.
please,
Have you thought
Tennis
about,
match.
is it the land across the street from the park?
That's Southport Church.
No, the other street.
Across from Wilson Davis is developed already.
The,
No, you're talking about the home,
the
that's there.
army truck.
Yeah.
Well, he's already losing a good chunk of his road frontage on Weddington, and he will be getting a check for what he loses. Plus, they're redirecting Lester Davis Road to take off even more of his property, so where his driveway is currently will be where the new roadway goes. I was hoping we could do some kind of a land swap with the DOT where they take the road frontage across Weddington Road, and they give us the part where the road is existing, because they're gonna push that road toward the military Jeep or military truck, but it wasn't, they didn't want to do that. So we've got to find not 0.73 acres of land, but we've got to find $50,500 worth of land that we can buy and deem parkland in perpetuity. It can't be used on, a playground equipment. It can't be used on maintenance or anything else. It has to be used on land acquisition.
Does it have to be contiguous to the park itself, or can it be?
It could be a separate piece, it could be contiguous to the piece that we have behind 201 Central, could be separate, could be kept part of the Carolina Freight Train.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, could we get, I'm sure that if the property owner adjacent to that is aware of what's going on with the value and the asking price for what they're wanting is leveraged on their end.
But as Mike said, and he was correct, that we need to spend $50,500 on that full amount of money, not necessarily a corresponding 0.73 acres of land.
Yeah.
So it could be half an acre if that works. .73 acres along that eastern frontage would be about 45 feet or so that we would need, but if, at that price, you know, but if it wasn't that price, then what can we get? So, if that's gonna be the case, but those discussions need to be had.
Does that get evaluated by a third-party
No.
estimator, or
Fair
do
market
we have
value
to
is what.
take what DOT's offer?
You can argue somewhat, but they actually do quite a bit of work on that because of all of the issues they've had in the past. Yes, John?
Do you guys consider consulting with the planning board at some point along the process?
Sure.
Just asking. Nothing else. Just thinking of new use somewhere in the village. Might make sense to make sure it coincides with the overall plan.
You can bring it up to them too, if you'd like. It's fine.
I'm good with it.
I'll take all the input up there. As I said in the beginning, I like input. All those in favor of the motion? Thank you. Unanimous. Appreciate it. Item 15 is the update on the Eagle Scout projects and procedure. At the last meeting, we briefly discussed the process or the procedure that we should be going through that was previously developed. We're meeting with the Scout, what he's called, regional director, I think that's right, and went over a number of things. One is repairing. There was some previous we weren't exactly seeing eye to eye, and they're 100% on board now. Mike has done some work with them because of the flagpole project. I think it was discussed at the last meeting. That's been approved now, reapproved after it was actually turned down initially. So, and the regional director couldn't have been any more, pleased with, the fact that we were all able to work together. So, and he's looking for projects even throughout the entire town. So, if you guys know one, it's got to be certain criteria. I don't know all the criteria, so I'm not about to try and tell everybody that. But it has to be something that's ongoing, that will be there, and typically years from now. So it can't be just a maintenance project or raking leaves or something like that. So the other thing I did was I went through with the scout leader, and he really only had one sentence. He wanted one portion of one sentence, which was the last sentence in the procedure that talks about doing the recap, the scout doing the recap of their fundraising for the project and whether the fundraising was successful. If the project is done, that is the council's, the scout council's realm. That is not ours. Now, I did do some restructuring of it. I thought it didn't read straightforward, and I did add one additional paragraph which says essentially that for scout projects to be considered at any village project, the scouts should meet with the village Parks and Rec committee at one of their meetings and discuss the idea, and then they will provide a recommendation to the council who will consider preliminary approval of the project. So, there were some tweaks here and there that I did do, like alternatives and talk about things like that. But I don't know if anybody has any particular thoughts around this.
I like the way it was revised.
I mean, most of it is, almost all of what was there is there. I just did a couple of pieces and restructured slightly, so to me it flowed a little bit, in my opinion. Again, that's on my opinion.
If you're going to the Park and Rec for pre-approval or looking at the project list, they still have to come to the council for final approval and their uniform to make the presentation.
So I'll make a motion that we adopt the policy with the revisions as presented to council.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. All those in favor?
And Cheryl, I would ask specifically that, sorry,
I'm sorry.
I would ask,
You made it.
I made a motion, who seconded?
Paul seconded.
Paul seconded it, passed unanimously, and I would ask that you take this new policy and distribute it to all the Parks and Rec Committee at your first convenience.
Thank you. And as I said, I didn't really mean a motion to reaffirm commitment to supporting the scouting community. I think we all agree with that anyway, so I don't think we need a motion. We actually approved Scouting Week at our last meeting, so I don't think we need a separate motion on that, unless anybody really wants to do it. But let's go on. Number 16 is review park policy on organized sports.
Mr. Mayor, that was mine. We had some issues last summer with two separate schools, two separate cross-country teams using the park for practices. Our Parks and Rec Committee specifically has a policy on organized sports where we basically said we don't want organized sports. We have organized sports across the street at the WCWAA. This has created some issues with the number of kids per the team, the number of parking spaces. It's almost like when we have an event where we have to bring in extra porta pots, we have to secure parking, we have to take care of additional garbage and things like that. Last year, this was an ongoing issue where I got complaints on a regular basis from residents saying that they couldn't just come to the park and walk their dog. So I think the need for this is to enforce the policy that we already have on the books, that Dogwood Park is not designed or set up to have large groups of organized sports using it for practices, for the reasons I just stated.
The only question I have, and I really don't have an issue with reinforcing what existed, is how do we enforce this?
I think it could be just a simple letter sent to the two schools that had issue with it last year. I think it was Sun Valley Middle School and Weddington Middle School and their cross-country teams.
It was CAD.
Was it CAD? Well, I think once we are going to reaffirm that we're going to enforce this policy, just make a general statement that if it is violated, we just simply send a letter to the school or to the coach of whatever team is using the facilities for practices, and say this is against our policy and we'd like you to cease and desist.
Are there park policies posted in the park anywhere? Should this be added to it?
No, it's there.
Oh, it is there?
The park policy, is that on
Yeah,
posting? Okay, so yeah, it is posted. I was not aware that it was posted, but yes, we do have the
It's
policies.
in that
It's also on our
folder.
website.
Nobody can see it.
Yeah, so,
Put that up. What are you talking about? The board, not the policy.
yeah, we dug the hole for that board.
That's right.
So the motion will be to enforce the policy we have, and if anyone's caught violating, we're not trying to fine anybody, we're not trying to upset anybody, but just send a general letter to the school or to the coach asking them, or reinstating or stating to them that our policy is that we don't allow organized sports to practice in the park.
Is that a letter from the mayor?
I think it would just be a letter from the town. I don't want to put any person on the spot. And if it continues, then maybe we'll have to, make a phone call or something. But, and I don't want to start off this summer season with problems. So I would make a recommendation that if we know who was kind of violating the policy last year, we should just send them a general reminder to say, just so you know that we don't allow organized sports in Dogwood Park. And, the last thing I want to do is have a bunch of kids show up and then have to turn them away or create a scene. I'd like to avoid that kind of a problem. So I think a simple letter to the school or to the coaches stating our policy would clarify it so that this problem goes away.
I make a motion that we reinforce our park policy on organizing sports to use the park and send letters to previous organized sport users.
I won't say offenders.
We have a motion.
Okay. Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion?
Well, I'll differ on that, because I think this really points out, we've gone through this redistricting thing, and now we're under the new realignment program, which effectively put us back to where we were before that all started, and we're there. I think what this shows is it really points out the really structural differences between the schools. Weddington has an intricate cross-country trail path down there. They really don't need to use the park. Sun Valley and Cata have absolutely nothing. I mean, they've got, I don't know about Cata, but I can speak for Sun Valley, they basically have dirt fields. And, if it gives the kids an outlet, I don't know how many kids were down there, certainly wasn't there. If it gives them an outlet that they can do some cross-country practice there, I don't know how they can limit the numbers, but, it's kind of tough if you've got a community park that's being funded by tax dollars or Part F dollars, and again, under the old program, all of our kids in Westwood Chapel were basically reassigned to Sun Valley, which didn't have access to a facility like that. So, that's my point of difference on it.
The issue, the complaints that I was receiving, there was no place to park.
Yeah.
The number of kids was 40 or 50 per team, I'm guesstimating. And then there was 2 separate teams practicing on the same evenings at the same times. And then we have insufficient bathroom facilities. The trash receptacles were overflowing after the fact. And it was just, the park is a passive park to go there and throw the frisbee, walk your dog, push your stroller. But we've got kids literally running around the lake in a very organized.
I don't know if it's just better coordination with the schools and the coaches to say, well, we need to minimize this.
I heard 2 separate things. I heard, some parents are just dropping their kids off, so there's only really a log jam there during drop-off and pickup. But a lot of times the parents were dropping their kids off, they were staying, they were walking around the park while their kids were practicing, and then when they were done, all the kids and the parents got back in the car, they drove away. The one time I went over there and saw it with my own eyes, it took me 30 minutes to get from the bottom of the driveway to the parking space, and then I ended up parking in the grass. So it got to that point, and some of the regular visitors to the park were upset.
Well, it's not only that, I think to your point, because it's paid for with tax dollars, that we need to keep that availability for people to show up. And, if it's a couple of kids that go down there and run on their own, no big deal. But when it's 20, 30 kids and, parents and cars, then we're actually failing in that.
And this goes back to, we didn't write this rule. This rule was written when Parks and Rec was.
Yeah, it was mostly written because of the limited number of parking spaces. So when we have events, when we have a large number of turnout, we have to, part of the written procedure is we have to procure parking from Southport Church. And then when you get parking from Southport Church, then you have to have the deputies crossing people safely across the street. And then if you're gonna have 100 kids there, you've gotta have extra bathrooms, you've gotta have, it just starts to snowball.
Those are just my comments. I'm celebrating the fact that kids are out actually exercising and
Absolutely.
doing healthy alternatives and stuff.
It is, it's great.
We did get some complaints though that the bathrooms, like he says, the bathrooms and traffic. I've been there and 40 kids running past you, and it disturbs people that are trying to take a child in a stroller or whatever.
All right, well,
That's just my comments.
no,
Well, hopefully, the unavailability of the park will spur schools to look for other places and other resources.
When I was in high school, I used to have to run around high school, and on rainy days, we used to run inside. That really sucked.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, 2-1, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a donation of a picnic table at Bellwood Park. I think that's yours again, Mike.
Yeah, we have an issue at the dog park where people, we have a couple of, we actually have 3 standard picnic tables in the park, and there's what you would typically see as a picnic table. And the dogs were jumping up on top of them, and at one point, someone knocked a drink over, they took out a cell phone, and I started getting people saying, what can we do to keep dogs from jumping up on the picnic table? I said, absolutely nothing, they're dogs. But what we could do is build a picnic table that is higher than a standard picnic table, a bar height picnic table, which I built myself, donated the funds for the materials, and then took it over to the park. But we have to formally accept the donation, and it's been very popular since we put it in. I did not do this maliciously, I thought I was helping, but Cheryl and the mayor said that I should formally put this on the agenda so that we can accept the donation.
I make a motion, we accept the picnic table.
I'll second it.
Got a motion, a second, further discussion? Got the picture?
That's it?
We do need to get approval from Union County for accessibility,
For a picnic table.
for anything.
And well, again, I think it's a ratio. If you remember, we had to
Yeah.
have so many picnic tables that had handicapped accessibility.
Well-
So I don't think that will affect that, but we could say contingent upon Union County approval.
I'll make
I
this,
amend my motion.
and
Does everybody second?
I'll amend my second.
Fine. It works.
Pending Union County.
Which will come to the next item.
Their blessing.
Actually, 2 items from now.
Well, we know that.
Yeah,
So we got in trouble one other time, so let's not get there.
Absolutely.
All those in favor of the motion? Thank you.
Then can we go ahead and skip to the general repairs and come back to the 87K?
Sure.
As we just talked about picnic tables, the original picnic tables in the park, we've never paid for a grill, park bench, a picnic table. We've never paid for anything in the park. These have all been donated through either Sandra Bradford's 501(c)(3) Partners for Park, the Boy Scout projects, what have you. But some of the original picnic tables that were built back in 2013, before the park opened, haven't been taken care of very well and are starting to fall apart. Some of the benches need a simple screw put in. Some of the picnic tables need to be rebuilt. Some of the picnic tables need to be thrown away because they're in bad shape. But the handicap picnic tables, which goes back to the accountability, are in pretty good shape. Well, we have general repairs at the park need to be done. We've got the split rail fence in 4 or 5 different locations that just needs the old split rail taken out, the new split rail put in. It's not a difficult repair to do. It's not a costly repair to do. We have the materials. But we just basically need to have the authority or permission to go in and put a screw in a bench, or to fix the broken wood on the top of the picnic table, or to replace a slat in a busted fence. So that's basically what this motion is about, or what this item is about. I don't know how you would form that in a motion.
Before you make the motion, I usually like to have a motion second before we have a discussion, but since I've asked to change the motion anyway a little bit.
Okay.
Can we set like a dollar value and say anything, above or below a certain dollar value? Below a certain dollar value can be done under this method, and then make it a couple $100, I don't know. But anything above that would indicate to me something more significant that we should probably have a professional look at.
Well, absolutely. I'm not talking about doing anything that requires electrical or plumbing
Right.
or grading or anything like that. I'm talking about adding a screw or a bench to keep the leg on. I'm talking about
Understood.
replacing a slat in the fence.
But I'd like to kind of set a bench or a threshold so that it's kind of clear to everybody.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
That's my opinion.
I just like to see an inventory I've seen pictures and whatever, but I don't know if be of the opinion of going to a metal picnic table bench. These wooden ones are just.
no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the only reason we went with these wooden picnic tables is when the park opened, when we came up with the very first 6 picnic tables that a Boy Scout donated to us, I was showing those off to Bill Whitley from the Union County Parks. He looked at me and said, man, those are great picnic tables. Where's your handicap ones? So then we had another Boy Scout step up and make a couple handicap, and the ratio of regular handicap, or regular tables to handicap picnic tables had to be equaled out. I think as we move forward, as we move forward with the upcoming budget for the Parks Committee, I agree with you 100%. We should just be repairing what we have until we can afford to go out and buy more substantial, longer lasting, more
Moments and honestly
permanent.
will change. I mean, if there's ones that, because I've seen some that have broken slats or seats.
Yep. I mean, there's,
If it's beneficial to say, hey, let's just repair and replace as they go.
well, I think long-term, the best way to fix this is, as you said, replace the wooden ones with metal ones so that we stop having to address, busted wood on a picnic table. But at the same time, if we can go in and fix a few broken picnic tables with a couple pieces of wood and some screws, we have people willing to do that.
So would we set a dollar amount for
General repairs.
repairs that don't include electrical and plumbing or grading?
Well, yeah, nothing that would require,
Licensed contractor.
licensed contractors, so.
But who would be the approved people, council and the park director?
In the past, we've had volunteers doing things like pushing wheelbarrows full of rock, and that takes care of the washout area on the trail. Replacing a slat on a fence, you don't need to be rocket science to do that. Putting a screw in a bench to hold the leg on, again, anybody in this room could turn a screwdriver. I don't think we need to say only this person, but in general, either the Parks and Rec Committee or volunteers, as long as they're minor repairs, it's kind of the flavor of what we're trying to do. So with that, I would say to put a dollar cap on it of $250 for materials, to do minor repairs around the park as needed. I would point to the repairs we did to the fishing pier about a year ago. One of the slats, not on the rail, but on the actual ground, flew out. And I think the repairs total was about $40, Cheryl, to repair the fishing pier with the 2 holes in it. By the time we bought a piece of wood.
Two things I want to interject is, one, can we leave the fountain alone because we have Foster Lake doing that?
Well, yeah, if we've got, we're not gonna be doing anything in landscaping, we pay a landscaper. We're not gonna be doing anything with the fountain, we pay a fountain guy.
But the other thing is, to avoid an audit comment, we need to set like, whatever, 100, 200, whatever, and say, okay, you can spend up to that much, because I need to pre-audit everything, and so that would be the pre-audit that you can.
Only it's in the
spend
budget, that was the other
Yeah.
thing I was gonna add.
And the other thing is, yeah, we have 2,000, but we just pretty much approved spending all of it, so.
But, yeah, at the same time, I'm thinking, if we can say, repair the benches, repair the tables, repair the fence, we're talking, one, these aren't emergency repairs, and I would let council know in advance, but you're talking maybe $150, $200 in materials to do these repairs. And once they're done, I don't know of any other major repairs that need to be done. And these aren't major, these are minor, but they're cosmetic more than anything else.
So you would set a certain amount to spend between now and the end of June,
Oh, you wanna appropriate that now, is that what
and
you're
we would need
thinking?
to appropriate it, yeah.
Okay,
And
I
I
say
would,
between now and the next meeting, we would appropriate a number, but just come back with an inventory list of, hey, here's what the projects need to be
yeah,
identified.
Well,
Because we
that's-
don't have a list of that right now.
we've got a list of, we have we know how many picnic tables are in the park, we know how many park benches.
so you meant projects.
Projects.
That you were thinking.
Well, the only things I can think of now is repair the fence, repair the benches, repair the picnic tables. I can't think of anything other, there might be some repairs to the fishing pier, but nothing jumps out at me. So I would say, approve $250. I don't think we have to move money for that, do we, unless the
We
plumbing
do.
repairs go?
We do, just in
We
case.
do, we don't have.
Okay.
Yeah, because we just approved up to 1,800 for the
Do we have to pull it out of
contingency.
contingency, or is there anything else we can pull it from?
I think you could put it from grounds, we haven't spent much there.
All right. So the motion would be to spend up to $250 on materials for pulling the money from grounds to do general repairs around the park. Lumber, screws, minor repairs.
And who's gonna spend the money?
I don't think Parks and Rec can, but council can.
So do you,
So it'd be me or Brad or any council member who wants to roll up your sleeves on a Saturday and go out and buy some screws. So that's the motion.
Was that the motion?
That was the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll
Do
second.
you have that, Cheryl?
Mhm.
Okay, the whole motion. Take it everybody box. Any other comments?
So this is now to June, is this something we also need to remember when we're budgeting?
Yep.
We need to have a little line item for
Yeah.
June.
Well, in the past, we had, general repairs, park improvements.
We have the line item, we just didn't have enough money.
Right. All those in favor? We didn't take the vote yet. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me get both picnic tables together.
Okay, item number, whatever it is now, which is the $87,000, Mike?
Yeah, that was also mine. Restoring park funds of $87,000. We had agreed as a council in the past to set money aside for a long-term project on the community center. And the way we calculated how to do that is if the council or if the town ended up with a budget surplus at the end of the fiscal year, that we would take 20% of that budget surplus and put it specifically toward that new community center. We've done that for the last number of years. I think starting in 2014, we did it for 2 years, and that's where the $87,000 came from. Most recent council took that money and put it back into the general fund, and I'd like to reinstitute the policy of budget surplus, if any. 20% of that would go to the community center, plus reinstate the $87,000 back into the fund that it was in before. Cheryl, did that fund have a name?
All it is, it's really not a fund. I think people get really confused by it all. All it is saying that we have some money in the bank, and we're saying that we think we'd like to spend it for that.
Right.
But we can change our mind today, tomorrow, or
But how does that work as far as when the budget rolls over, when the fiscal year rolls over, and you got money in that account set aside specifically for the community center?
it's real difficult about that 20% because I have to get everything in to figure out what the 20% is, and Park and Rec keeps asking me, what's the 20%? What's the map? What's the map? I don't have a map for them.
You wouldn't know until September or something.
Right, exactly. It takes a.
Would it be better if I made this two separate motions, one to restore? Yes? Yes, no?
Two separate motions, I'm listening to it.
Would you rather it be two separate
That was
motions?
something else.
One to restore the 87,000, and then secondly to go back to setting aside a budget for the community center?
I don't care.
Well, I'll make it two separate motions. First motion is to restore the $87,000 back to the Parks and Recs Committee, specifically to go toward the
It's really
Community
not
center.
Park and Rec Committee, it's fund balance, it's just designating an amount in fund balance.
fund balance for the Parks and Rec Committee. So that's,
Wait, how'd you slip that back in?
You can't, it's not,
Cheryl, you're gonna have to help me with terminology here. How would you like me to word this? I'm looking for a
they
suggestion.
reserve, they reserve.
Designate an amount in fund balance for a community center. That was what it was.
So motion.
What she said.
What she said.
Cheater. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, further, additional comments?
My comments are we just leave it where it is right now. It's, we've got plenty of things coming up, whether it's a band show or whatever. It's not a specific fund, as Cheryl was saying. Just leave it where it is. We can address needs that are coming along. I mean, Park and Rec Committee's only had one meeting, and we could just keep it simple.
Well, this was designated so that we don't know exactly what a community center will cost us, but we figured if we start saving now, by the time we're finished with projects like the band shell and the playground equipment and the freestanding bathrooms and all that, we would have some money set aside specifically for this community center. That's why we set it up initially back in 2014, and they would like to go back to using that, and I'd like to see them do that as well.
I think it's a good idea to designate it only because it says those funds are really allocated. That does not prevent us from pulling them back if something really big came up and we said, geez, we really need to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and that's more important right now. But I also think, as Mike pointed out, saving for showing you're setting aside these monies also gets to a point, let's say there was a deal of the century came up where we could put one up, and now we didn't have any funds in any particular, because we spent them on, I don't know what, something frivolous. Not that we would ever spend on frivolous, let me take that back. But spend it on something that maybe was not as important. I think there's that, it's a wherewithal that says, gee, if we can, we're gonna do it for this. If we need it for something else, that's different. But I like the fact that it's designated. That's my take. It's not reserved, I guess is the right word. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I need to go look at my.
There's some specific word that it's not there are certain funds certain things that you can that are established that are not, they're reserved. You can't use them for anything else. That's not, I can't think of the term either.
Right, well, that was right.
But the funds won't disappear at the end of the fiscal year?
No.
Okay.
They're always in the reserve anyway. It's basically part of your general reserve.
Okay.
They're not technically part of the budget, correct? They're part of the.
I mean, you might end up with somebody offers you 5 acres you want to buy, and
Right.
you may want to then take it
Part
out
of that with the
this.
fee and lieu and that money and buy that. I don't know. Or as part of 0.73.
Mhm.
And I was actually thinking of toying around with the idea of saying, well, why don't we just call it Park and Rec amenity, a future Park and Rec, future Park and Recreation,
And we do
capital
have,
projects.
we do have that line item, fund balance assigned for future park improvements. It's only $3,550.
So would it
That's
be
a
easier
budget.
for you if the motion was,
No, it's a
Oh, that's
fund
a-
balance.
Okay.
so would it be easier for you if the motion was to put the money into that account?
Yeah.
All right. Amanda, would you rescind your second?
I'll rescind my second.
I'll rescind my motion and re-motion that the $87,000 be restored to the Parks and Rec Committee to go specific. You'd always say Parks and Rec Committee. To be restored to the fund for the.
They can't even spend money, so don't.
To go back to the line item for, what is it called again?
Fund balance assigned for future park improvements.
For future park improvement fund balance. So that's the motion.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? 2-1, motion carries. Part 2 of that?
Well, part 2 of that would be, I will motion that 20% of the budget surplus, if any, be allocated toward this fund that we just transferred the other funds into.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
A second.
I think that went short.
I made that one short, yes.
Any additional comments? All those in favor?
Guess it really can't vote for that. I can vote for the other, right?
You could, you could start from scratch.
No.
So, all those opposed?
Have to be formed.
Okay. I'd say, hey, start from scratch. I don't know.
It brings up that'll be the comment for Friday. It brings up an interesting comment. If we have that much interest of an active use park as opposed to a passive use park, what are our plans for active park outside of WCWA? Because that's a completely different thing.
Well, depends on the activities, but yes. I mean, playground is totally different than WCWA, for instance.
Yeah.
which is something that's been talked about.
I
And
can't
you
have.
just do it gotta be ADA compliant, it's got, I mean, you're talking municipal funds.
I can add that both the band shell project and community center project would be projects that would generate income for the town. Where if we had a multi-purpose community center, that could be rented out to Boy Scout groups or knitting circles or whatever type of community event would like to rent that space out. So it will create income, as well as the band shell for events.
Okay, item 20 is, I guess we're up to review codification, draft and respond to codification questions. This is, again, another item that's been kicking around for several years that you guys acted on in the previous council, which was good. Not that you, a lot of things that were good. Sorry, that came out really weird. So I'm tired. I said it, so I said it was weird. But basically,
In 2 years, we did something different.
in a sense, all right. In a sense, we did, that's gonna be on film now, great. Mayor whacks himself.
YouTube, here we go.
I get 1,000 million hits, whatever, I don't even look at the darn thing. So, this is getting all of our ordinances and things, and sort of what was being asked earlier, in a sense that they're gonna be more readily in a combined package that can be viewed and seen and searched, actually, at that point as well. So, it's something that has been discussed, and I will say, for a few years, I was one that kind of said, you know something, we've got the labels, we've got sections, we've got, section numbers, we've got a process for tracking, but we don't have the searchability and all of that. So, I think that makes sense. I think it's time that Brad joined the 21st century. So, I think it's a great idea. But what's going on is we've gotten some feedback from the consulting group that is working on this. And I forgot their name. Cheryl, help me out here.
It's through the League of Municipalities, and I forget the name too.
Yeah. I thought they had some kind of other name, but okay.
They do.
So what I was looking for is for myself, Cheryl, the planning administrator, Councilmember Fuller, and also, of course, to work with George to go through these things, address the questions that they come back with, and then we're not approving it or anything else. We'll come back to the council when it's ready, and
Is it a short list, long list?
this is it here. This is the initial questions. It was, I don't know if they had a number, they did. There's 24, but then there are some with subsections.
Fine.
So it's,
I think that's what we voted to move forward with that. I think it's vastly needed to be done.
absolutely.
So motion.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Paul. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Now, when this is done and complete, will it be an electronic version or will it just?
There will be an electronic version, and I'm not totally sure exactly how it'll work. We will get a couple of copies, but I think the days of all of planning board and all of council and everybody all getting their each own individual copy, I think that's gonna come to an end.
And I gotta give up my notebook? Hell no.
I'll trade that for an iPad.
You gonna buy it? You gonna buy it?
Telling
Anyway, council comments.
Oh, wait, we have one more item here.
Which one?
Rules of procedure.
We did this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Out of sequence, sorry. It worked its way to the wrong side of the pile.
Okey dokey. Council comments. I'll start down with Amanda. Anything, Amanda?
Yes, I hope that, I want to add to our discussion over the weekend, just so we don't forget about it, to talk about the recording of the meetings and how we can get them posted on our website, or what we should do, if anything formal, I don't know, but I think in the spirit of trying to be more transparent, it would be nice to have the recording someplace besides Facebook.
Audio or video?
Oh,
Do you mean the video, or, I mean, the recording, I do get it.
right.
Yeah,
So,
audio.
so the.
That's why I asked you to clarify.
Okay, so the videos that are shot, if we could find a way to, I'm not saying make Bob our poor cameraman every week, but, you know, what do we need to do? What process do we need to follow, or, I wanna talk about that.
Yeah, I think in our budget for,
Well, there's a cost for it, obviously,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and
we're
then,
getting ready to go into our budget section.
Shall we look at economic options, or at least put it on the list, so that could be one of your suggestions for the Friday night? You get some, we all get some.
and I'd also, I just wanna take a moment to apologize to Cheryl for the negative comments and insinuations regarding the audit. This audit report shows clearly that we are in compliance with the rules and regulations and accounting principles, and I'd just like to state for the record how much I value Cheryl's wisdom and experience and contributions. I've learned a lot from her, and I just really appreciate that, and I apologize for negative treatment of you in the past.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Paul, or Mike? Yeah, Mike.
I can go. I got a few of them here. I was elected to represent Wesley Chapel for the COG, CCOG, Carolina Central Government. I went to the first meeting, met a lot of great people, met the new director who had only been on the job for about a month, and I asked him specifically, you know, what can COG do for the village of Wesley Chapel, considering residents are paying thousands of dollars to be a member of COG? And he went, I have no idea, but let me check into it. I went and spoke with previous COG members from Wesley Chapel. I spoke to COG members from other municipalities, and I got anything from, well, they serve a really nice dinner at the meetings, to, but I didn't
Our
see,
dinner would be nice.
I was looking for a direct correlation with the amount of money we spend to be a member of COG and what the residents get back from that. And COG seems to focus a lot on senior citizens. They focus a lot on Department of Transportation with you know, bus lines and things like that. We don't have a lot of homeless people in Wesley Chapel. We don't have a lot of invalid senior citizens that can't drive their own car, can't cook their own food, can't you know, have to take public transportation, which we don't have. So I've talked with a lot of them, and I made the commitment to the COG representative that I would not make a recommendation to council until I had a few more meetings under my belt. But the short answer is it's not looking good. We seem to be spending a lot of taxpayers' money on an organization that doesn't really do a lot for the residents in our community, because we don't have the problems that some of the other municipalities have. We don't have the homeless, we don't have the invalid senior citizens, we don't have the public transportation lines. So, the other thing I had noted here is a reminder, we have the upcoming budget. I'm sure we all have items specifically we'd like to take on for the next calendar year, next fiscal year. I know Parks was talking about it, and they're already getting together a budget for the next fiscal year. The notation I made here was, I don't like surprises at the end of the meeting, especially in the council comments, so I'm hoping that after George does the research or Cheryl contacts the League of Municipalities, that we're not going to vote in favor of allowing motions to be made during council comments, because I mean, at the end of the meeting, we started off with a lot of people here, we're down to 5. I don't want those meetings to, I don't want there to be surprises at the end of the meetings, that people that were here are surprised about by the next day by the news. So I'm hoping that we'll hold that up. The last thing I have here is related to the Boy Scout projects and the park in general. We did upgrades in the park over a few years ago with electrical. We put it in a few key spots because we knew we needed it for events. I think we need to look at running electricity a little bit further in the park. As some people know, that when we have events, we try to use that central location where the compass is to set up tents and things like that. It'd be nice if we had electrical there. And I'm thinking specifically about the Boy Scout project. He does not have the money in the budget to light the flagpole, but I think if we ran electricity over there to there, it would be something that we would use, that the parks would use, but at the same time benefit the Eagle Scout. So you might see that on the agenda for next month.
Paul? Yeah, I hope I was going to the right COG meetings because we haven't talked about the homeless stuff. And I had skipped across.
70% of their budget is related to seniors and homeless
I think
and
the,
residents.
and Cheryl and I have talked about that too when I was doing the COG stuff. So in case you guys, 5 of you didn't know, I was doing CARTCO and COG, and they kind of dovetailed a little bit together because there's a lot of little nuggets of information. I had Jim Prosser, who was the prior director, had he and his team come out here. They did a presentation to us, it was the same kind of conversation of really what are the benefits that maybe we're not extracting out of it. And at that point, we were in the midst of the survey, which I would be an advocate of redoing another survey, doing it where it's more accessible, where we do have 8,500 residents plus 8,500 plus or minus out here. The survey we took, we ended up getting about 200 of them back, if I'm not mistaken, Cheryl?
260.
Yeah, so 250, 260. So we're basing a lot of decisions, a lot of information off a very small sampling percentage. That's some of the things that COG can do. They've got some capabilities in that area. I think we just need to utilize maybe some of their resources better. Since not being on COG and CARPO, I'm doing the leadership union thing and the liaison with the chamber. I think the takeaway from that is we really all really need to realize how blessed we are to be in Wesley Chapel and Weddington and even this corridor. Because the way it's set up, last month's meeting was all nonprofits for Union County. I know I got 3 minutes, so I better hurry. It's mind-blowing to realize that you can get four spreadsheet pages full of nonprofits that are all activating and working in Union County, whether it's Health Quest, Union County Health Services, and we start to realize how much need there is out there. And for the Red Cross, they're willing to come out and do free health assessments for our community residents. So I was kind of taking this step back in this epiphanal thing of how lucky and how blessed we are out here. There's a lot of griping and complaining about development and whatever else. And, you know, as I was thinking about today, we celebrate the fact that Target is our founding point of Wesley Chapel. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. The changes are the community should be affected a little bit differently now that we've got realignment going on. There's some other, and you can get into this with the education stuff, there's some other undercurrent changes within Union County Public Schools that'll be going on, like the potential closing down of Providence School and Waxhaw, and how that could affect school communities of reintroduction of kids that have traditionally been taken out of schools. So there's just a lot of stuff going on, and that's the good thing about a lot of what I'm doing is I get layered in a lot of different conversations, and that's what I hope people will take from a bigger view that I try and take from this role up here, not just specifically looking at one particular thing. So, anyway, sorry I ran over my time.
You know, I really have about 3 things, and they're all kind of actually very specific. There's been questions about, I know there's only 5 people here, but I'm going to say anyway, about the Novan facility, since it's being recorded especially. That's next door. It is not going to be in urgent care. I'm actually still waiting for an email from Aston Properties to validate. There are 3 types of, I guess, care that is going in there. One is going to be pediatrics, another is going to be OB/GYN, and the third she didn't know off the top of her head. So she is going to forward me an email, so I will share that information because there's been a lot of back and forth. At the same token, and kind of all has to do with this general area, the building of that building has totally blocked visibility to town hall other than the, 30 or 40, whatever it is, feet at the entrance. And, just be paying attention to the road, not looking down this way. So, one of the things that I recall from my past history is when this was being built, the folks in Blackstone, who most of those homes, as many people may or may not know, are not even in Wesley Chapel, actually had offered at one point to let us thin the woods that are up there. Those woods just past our parking lot here, between us and the road, are part of the Blackstone property, so common area. So I am already talking to one of the board members, and we're going to walk the area, and we're going to talk to their HOA and see if they want to, allow us to do that. If we can take that out, that'll give us our visibility back to a somewhat of a significant degree. Maybe not quite as much as we had, but anyway. Just wanted to let everybody know that, especially council. And lastly, the land behind Town Hall. I know we've tabled that project for now that was out there because there's road work going on here, etc. But one of the things I think we might be able to do, and I'm waiting for a call back from Astor Properties, or their subcontractor, is they've got land moving equipment there now, just potentially leveling everything out back there for now, generally, and then doing final grading and the whole inspection thing when the road is done and when we know the finished grades and things like that, so that we can spend money wisely at that point.
Do you think Aston will be up for letting us buy $50,000 of the land from them, so it will be contiguous to the land we already own?
I thought about that, but then we'd have to make it park land if we were gonna do that.
Yeah,
Okay, so that means we'd have to subdivide because this is office institutional.
well, I understand. Just a thought.
Yeah, I did think of that.
Bad idea.
And this is my comment.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I did think about that. Good, again, same thing I was thinking through, and then I talked myself out of it. So I think we're making progress. I hope to see some people there. Picking you people on the camera to show up for our meeting on Friday night. Love to see you there. As I said from the beginning, I'm all about community and input. We're 5 people. Decisions are much easier when there's hundreds and maybe thousands. But anyway, so at that note, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed?
All right. We adjourn. We got a gavel.
Hit the gavel.
See, if I'm gonna use it, it's gonna be wham.
Are you talking about?
We're adjourned.
$5 dinner for him to film for you Friday night.
Too much caffeine.
Are you talking about thinning the woods out or eliminating?
Could be either. I'm gonna give them the option.
Who's the guy running?
I was in favor of thinning.
Ron Smith.
They actually mentioned to me